Shalom and welcome everyone. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. You've arrived at the Unexpected Cosmology in classes in session again for the second time this evening. Tonight's destination is a long time coming, probably 2 years in the making, which means, I suppose, that the current horizon is not so much a detour as a winding scenic route. In fact, I have an entire stack of topics which I've yet to tend to, several stacks, in fact. I've been putting this one off for far too long, and to the point of negligence, but no longer. The biggest issue that everyone generally has with my proposal that the Millennial Kingdom already happened, and that we're currently residing in the season of Satan's deception via Revelation 20, has to do with the timing of New Jerusalem's arrival. The doctrine of many dictates that New Jerusalem descends from heaven at the gunshot sprint of Messiah's return, soon as the tribulation is ended, or you could say maybe the apocalypse, and therefore proves the claims of those who are investigating the mud flood wrong. In my opinion, the New Jerusalem issue is a convenient ploy to brush aside the reality that history as we know it is only about 200 years old, and that we're being completely lied to about everything, including his story. The mud flood is not a deception. It can be easily proven. It happened rather recently, and it's not being told to us in any official recording of history. What we're trying to get to the bottom of is the identity of the universal government that existed on this flat, motionless plane before the last reset inverted everything. Well, I aim to tuck in the sheets and put this argument to bed. It really has been a long time coming. New Jerusalem, in fact, arrives after Satan's deception, not before, which just so happens to be where we find ourselves on the timeline, somewhere in between the Millennial Kingdom and the arrival of New Jerusalem. As you will know by now, Satan is lying to us about everything. If there is any truth anywhere, and there most certainly is, it's only because of Yahuwah's intervention. The light shines in the darkness. The only trouble is, it is the darkness which does not recognize the light. And these are truly dark times. Now, regarding New Jerusalem, by the time I'm through tonight, I hope to prove that everyone's wires are crossed on the issue. There is a sleight of hand at play, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The only problem, of course, is that solving this issue, and I believe I've satisfactorily done so, at least for myself, opens up a Pandora's box of questions and inquiries. Some would call it a can of worms, but I love having my reality flipped upon its head. The implications are indeed staggering. From this moment forward, whole new issues arrive before us. Breadcrumb trails which I aim to follow, and I cannot possibly know where they lead. So, that being said, let's open with prayer. Polly, are you still with us? Would you like to do the honors?
Yes. Gracious Father, you are everything that we have and everything that we need. And without you, we are nothing. We're not even dust, because without you, dust wasn't even here. And so grant to us ears to hear. Grant us favor in your eyes and favor in the eyes of man. Grant us wisdom. Grant us knowledge, and grant us, obviously, understanding of what this information means. Impart to us your precious Ruach, that we might have eyes unblinded and hearts unfettered. Thank you so much. Amen.
Beautiful. Dave, are you ready for the book drawing? I wanted to do a book drawing tonight before I jump into my presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, Dave, go ahead and do the drawing. As you're doing it, I'll explain this. We want to give away another Aramaic Targum tonight, and I really want to do this more often. If anyone in the room, if you do win this and you already have it, just get 2 of them and hand it to somebody, because these are really awesome, and somebody out there is going to love to read this. So, whenever you're ready, Dave.
All right. Winner is Beth.
All right, Beth. So private message me and I'll have it shipped to you. You'll just, I'll have to get it. I'll let you know later if you don't hear that. Okay, so I dropped in the tonight's material: Millennial Kingdom, Mudflood, a tale of two Jerusalems. So let's begin. Part 1: Old Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, Hidden Jerusalem, and the fake Jerusalem we all know and love. The millennial kingdom of Messiah couldn't very well have happened, you tell me, while sarcastically snapping your neck about at the horizon like a robotic pigeon. Messiah's kingdom and New Jerusalem are synonymous. One cannot simply happen without the other. I'm on to you. You're so wrong. Where's New Jerusalem, Noel? Show me New Jerusalem. Why so silent? Dumped you again. Seriously, guys, this is like therapeutic for me, but this is literally my life for the last couple of years. Well, I can't very well show you New Jerusalem now, can I? As I am not yet immortal, but also because it hasn't arrived yet. Proof that I've fallen off the bandwagon and that the millennial kingdom hasn't happened, you say. Oh, is it? Technically, we're dealing with 4 separate Yerushalayim's, not 2. But as titles go, I was attempting to be clever. A Tale of Two Cities is a post-Mudflood Charles Dickens novel. See what I did there? A middle-aged man once told me, it's always best to start with something silly. Loosen your audience up a bit. Thank you, but please save your applaud for the end, as we have much to cover. I bet you didn't see 4 Jerusalems coming, though. 3, maybe, but not 4. And that is because there is the historical Yerushalayim we find in Scripture, which is not to be confused with the fake Yerushalayim we find in Israel today. If you're counting them up on your fingers, that's 2. But also, there are 2 Yerushalayim's detailed during the millennial kingdom of Messiah, which makes 4 in all. Yeah, there's more than one city of Jerusalem in the kingdom of Messiah. Confused? Don't be. It's like visiting York in England and then loving the experience so much that you thirst for a voyage to New York in America. That is why we're here, to visit both locations. So, I guess you could say, The Tale of Two Jerusalems is an accurate title after all. I suppose if I had to describe my purpose in writing this paper, then it's one in which I aim to uncross wires, resolve conflicts, and answer aching inquiries, while ultimately discovering new unanswered questions in the process. The unanswered part is where the fun really begins. After we're through, you and I will have new breadcrumbs to follow. Are you excited? I am. That being said, my present purpose is not to demonstrate that the millennial kingdom already happened, as I suspect it did, nor is it to prove that the sliver of real estate which they tell us is Israel is a hoax. Those are arguments best saved for another outing. We are here simply to establish 2 separate Yerushalayim's coexisting during the millennial kingdom. So let's get right to it then. Truth of the matter is, the millennial kingdom is synonymous with New Yerushalayim, just probably not how most people have been taught to think. When someone is asked to paint a picture of Messiah's 1,000-year reign, they typically start with the Yerushalayim described for us in Revelation and then work backwards in Scripture. That wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except for the fact that very few pay any attention to what Ezekiel describes for us. Follow along. Now, this comes from Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 through 4. And just so everybody knows, if you start in Ezekiel 40 and you go, I think the last chapter of Ezekiel is 48, it's all about Yerushalayim, the whole thing. In the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after that, the city was smitten. In the selfsame day, the hand of Yahuwah was upon me and brought me thither. In the visions of Elohim, brought he me into the land of Yasharel, and set me upon a very high mountain, by which was as the frame of a city on the south. And he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man, whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, and a measuring reed. And he stood in the gate. And the man said unto me, Son of Adam, behold with your eyes, and hear with your ears, and set your heart upon all that I shall show you. For to the intent that I might show them unto you are you brought hither. declare all that you see to the house of Yasharel. Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 through 4. It says Ezekiel was taken to the land of Yasharel. That's probably important and certainly no small detail, as he was in captivity at the time of his vision. You will tell me you've been to Israel, and the city just described isn't to be found, as the Roman Catholic Church is still puppeteering there. I've been as well and have the same observation. I totally get it. That claiming modern Israel is not the real Yasharel from Scripture is fighting words. However, I am also attempting to establish the importance of its geographical location for readers on both sides of the argument. I checked. A survey was conducted among my readers, and many lean towards the likelihood that Zionist Israel is a forgery, a fake. So, if my claim is correct, then wherever the actual historical land of Yasharel is, we should expect to find the city of Yerushalayim and its temple there. The Yerushalayim being described, I suspect, is the camp of Yah, which Hasatan surrounds in Revelation 20, which tells us it's still there. Just checking, there seems to be somebody with their microphone on, so just double check because I hear somebody talking in the background.
Are we muted?
Over bullet.
Okay, there we go. Those whereabouts will need to be discussed at a later hour. The frame of the city which Ezekiel sees is Yerushalayim. Don't take my word for it. Read the entire chapter for yourself. Start in chapter 40 and continue all the way through to 48. Both the city and the temple are described in detail. I simply want to acknowledge the fact that the Yerushalayim being spoken of is in fact positioned within the land of Yasharel. Jumping ahead. This comes from all the way in Ezekiel chapter 48, chapter 16 through 19, so the last chapter of the book. And the 5,000 that are left in the breadth over against the 5 and 20,000 shall be a profane place for the city, for dwelling and for suburbs, and the city shall be in the midst thereof. And these shall be the measures thereof. The north side 4,500, and the south side 4,500, and on the east side 4,500, and on I guess I wrote that twice. And on the west side 4,500, and the suburbs of the city shall be toward the north 250, and toward the south 250, and toward the east 250, and toward the west 250. And the remnant in length over against the oblation of the holy portion shall be 10,000 eastward, and 10,000 westward. And it shall be over against the oblation of the holy portion, and the increase thereof shall be for food unto them that serve the city. And they that serve the city shall serve it out of all the tribes of Yasharel. Ezekiel chapter 48. The city of Yerushalayim is 4,500 on all sides. 4,500 what exactly? Are we talking about kilometers, yards, feet, or inches? The text doesn't outright say. The King James Version claims 4,500 cubits, but that's not quite right at all. If it were, then we'd be looking at something measuring 1.28 square miles. Compare that with the old city of Yerushalayim in the modern state of Israel, which is just under 1 kilometer, 0.9 kilometers alongside each wall, or 0.35 square miles total. Sure, the Yerushalayim of Ezekiel's vision has grown 4 times larger, perfect for a brisk morning jog, but that's not the city we're looking for. By comparison, New York City is 22.82 square miles. Washington, D.C. is something like 68 square miles, which is a huge naughty no-no, seeing as how Article 1 of the Constitution states that the district cannot exceed 10 miles square. Oh well, slave masters got to eat, I guess. Neither New York City nor Washington, D.C. are walled cities, though. In ancient terms, Nebuchadnezzar's battle miles, according to official history. Therefore, if the KJV is correct, and it's not, then Ezekiel's vision of Yerushalayim failed to exceed the very city Ezekiel was currently inhabiting. Again, the Hebrew Masoretic doesn't say cubits. The most likely measurement of Ezekiel was taken in rods. Before you accuse me of making the same error as King Jimmy's entourage, hear me out on this. I decided to punch in some numbers using a rod to mile conversion tool, and the city of Ezekiel's vision suddenly took on a rather fascinating form. Firstly, one rod equals 0.003125 of a single mile. You can then see in the provided picture that 4,500 rods adds up to something just over 14 miles. That's how long each wall is. Pick your cardinal direction, north, east, south, or west. The Jerusalem of Ezekiel's vision is 14 square miles. And isn't that interesting? The number sounds familiar, don't it? Where have we read that before? Well, perhaps here, Revelation chapter 21. And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. And the city lies foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed 12,000 stadion. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. And he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits, according to the measure of man, that is, of the angel. Johannen's revelation never gives the sum of New Jerusalem. He simply makes us calculate the number provided. The KJV measures the city in furlongs, whereas the Sefer claims stadions. What gives? Well, apparently, from the Middle Ages onward, the word stadion became a synonym for the furlong. How appropriate, considering what we've come to know of that period. Hence, the Dark Age was the Millennial Kingdom. A single stadia is 607 feet, or nearly 1/8 of a mile. Given that we have 12,000 stadia to work with, according to Johannen's vision of New Jerusalem, its sum is something like 1,400 square miles. Well, it's a match, sort of. As you can clearly see, one city is 14 square miles, whereas the next is 1,400. 1,500 by some calculations, but I'm inclined to believe the two are in sync with the other. Already we've established something. Johannen's Jerusalem dwarfs Ezekiel's Jerusalem. Therefore, they're not the same city. The next time somebody argues that New Jerusalem descends from heaven before the millennial kingdom and the Messiah rules from it, you can show them to be wrong based upon these numbers alone. What this ultimately means is Ezekiel's city and temple is intended to be a small-scale representation of the city and temple in heaven. That really shouldn't surprise anyone, as the tabernacle which Moshe built was also intended as a small-scale representation of the temple in heaven. The relationship is only alluded to in Exodus 25. Hebrews, however, details for us the fuller concept. And almost all things are by the Torah purged with blood, and without the shedding of blood there is no remission. It was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Mashiach is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figure of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim for us. Hebrews chapter 9, verses 22 through 24. There you have it. The holy places made with hands here on earth are figures of what is true in heaven. In this way, the city and temple which Ezekiel describes is a small-scale type and shadow of Johannen's much larger reality. Practically speaking, I'm not ready to talk about how the type and shadow plays out quite yet. You can probably already guess, though. There is still more evidence to give for the two separate cities before we get to that part. The prophet Zechariah offers us yet another clue. This comes from Zechariah chapter 6, verses 12 through 13. And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaks Yahuwah Sebaoth, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch. We all know who the branch is. And he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Yahuwah. Even he shall build the temple of Yahuwah, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon the throne. And he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of Shalom shall be between them both. Zechariah repeats it twice. He, Mashiach, shall build the temple of Yahuwah. And just in case you missed it, even he, Mashiach, shall build the temple of Yahuwah. He's referring to Ezekiel's Jerusalem. The temple complex being built is something along the lines of 1 square mile within a 10-mile square city. Would that assign the temple in heaven to something like 100 square miles? Seems legit. Zechariah never says New Jerusalem arrives with Messiah, in which he claims, guess what, guys? I've already built it. No, he arrives and then he builds it in that order. And no, don't tell me he's setting about to construct a 1,400-mile long city while on the earth, as that would be ridiculous. What that indirectly tells us is that the Jerusalem being built after his arrival is the one in which Ezekiel told us about. Also, assuming that Israel is legitimate, then any third temple built by the Zionist state, or the Temple Institute for that matter, will either be completely disregarded or destroyed to make room for the new. You'd think everyone would connect those dots, but no. Guess what, guys? The temple in heaven was already built when Zechariah made that prophecy, and not by human hands. Shocking, I know. I've shown you Moshe according to Hebrews. It was already built by his time too. Well, if that's not enough, then I'll refer you to Baruch, which says, this is the second Baruch, chapter 4. And Yahuwah said unto me, this city shall be delivered up for a time. And speaking of Jerusalem of his day, to the Babylonians. And the people shall be chastened during a time, and the people shall be chastened during a time, and the world will not be given over to oblivion. Do you think that this is the city of which I said, on the palms of my hands have I graven you? This building now built in your midst is not that which is revealed with me, that which was prepared beforehand here from the time when I took counsel to make paradise, and showed it to Adam before he sinned. But when he transgressed the commandment, these things I showed it to my servant Abraham by night, among the portions of the victims. And again, also, I showed it to Moshe on Mount Sinai, when I showed to him the likeness of tabernacle and all its vessels. And now, behold, it is preserved with me, as also paradise. Go, therefore, and do as I command you. I should have put in red there and highlighted the fact that it says right there that Moshe was also showed the temple, and that the tabernacle was its likeness. So there you go. You see, two temples. Better yet, how about going back and reading my paper on the once and future Jerusalem? For those of you attending tonight, you may recall about 3 or 4 months ago, I read that paper here, the once and future Jerusalem. I thoroughly demonstrated that the city of Elohim was built before the current world age even began. It once sat upon the earth and then was lifted up into heaven. Those details don't need repeating here. Suffice to say, Zechariah is clearly not referring to the abode in heaven when saying Mashiach shall build the temple of Yahuwah. Capiche? Part 2. And death shall be no more. This is the part where we begin driving the nails into the coffin, as if that hasn't already been happening. I mean, I could leave off with the measurements and call it a closed case, but then somebody would come along and tell me they're simply spiritual metaphors. Spiritual metaphors for what exactly? That is often how it goes in a post-Newtonian world, when our preferred worldview below doesn't match up with the above described. Nothing is to be taken literal, and it's all a metaphor, except for when it's not. And then it is again, but I digress. There is another defining difference between the two cities. Lots of them, actually. A very important one, however, is the fact that nobody dies in the renewed Jerusalem of Johannan's vision. It says so right here. This comes from Revelation 21, verses 1 through 4. And I saw a renewed heaven and a renewed earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, Johannan, saw the holy city, renewed Jerusalem, coming down from Elohim out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her man. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he will tabernacle with them, and they shall be his people. And Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. And Elohim shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death. There it is. Neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. So much can be pulled from this passage alone that I was pressed to highlight the entire thing. You'll have to forgive me, please. I beg it of you. It simply couldn't be helped. There's so much going on here, but let's focus on a few conditions for renewed Jerusalem's descent to the earth. And now that I'm reading this again, I wish I put an emphasis on the tabernacle part because that plays into this too. As above, so below. The first heaven and the first earth having already passed away is our initial clue. Another metaphor, I'm sure. Oh, sigh. If you are tempted to convey the message that the passing away and renewal of the two witnesses, aka heaven and earth, is yet again another spiritual metaphor for one thing or another, and that the earth itself will not literally be renewed, then explain to me how death shall be no more. And just to make certain we're not crossing our wires again, we can see what Yohanan is attempting to convey in the same chapter. Revelation 21, verse 8. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And again, this comes from chapter 20, verses 11 through 5. And I saw a great white throne and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the seraphim, the Sephirim, or the Sephers, the books, were opened, and another Sepher was opened, which is the Sepher of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Sheol delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and Sheol were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the Sefer of life was cast into the lake of fire. No more death means no more death. We can absolutely be certain of that fact because Yohanan defines the finality of death as Sheol being cast into the lake of fire. Therefore, you can no longer say there is a holding cell for dead people. All dead people have been accounted for in Sheol. Only now Sheol itself is tossed into the garbage heap and burnt to a crisp, taking everybody with it. The idea of a second death is a finality in that the first death is done away with once and for all. That is our context for the arrival of new Yerushalayim. The sinners are done away with. It's a problem since we're told by the prophet Isaiah or Yeshayahu that there would be death in the millennial kingdom of Messiah. Follow along. This comes from Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 65, verses 17 through 20. For behold, I create renewed heavens and a renewed earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind. But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. And I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and joy in my people. And the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. There shall be no more thence an infant of days, nor an old man that has not filled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. The context before us is the millennial kingdom, as we can clearly see a case is made that a child might die at 100 years of age. We are even told why that is. The 100-year-old person is accursed due to sin. Are you telling me there's sin in renewed Jerusalem? Yahuwah does promise to create a renewed heaven and a renewed earth in the same passage, but then adds that the former things shall not be remembered nor come into mind. The exact same sentiments are given in Revelation 21:4. Therefore, we can easily deduce that the child who dies does so before the former things are wiped from our memory. It would be strange indeed for a child to die and then, seconds later, nobody remembers that fact. Where did my child go? She was here a moment ago. Oh, wait, did I even have a child? Oh, no, it's happened again. I think the former things haven't been remembered again. Exactly. That is because verse 17 looks beyond the kingdom to renewed heavens and a renewed earth, whereas the remaining verses feature the kingdom age itself. Yeshayahu goes on to describe more of what his reader might expect of kingdom living, but I'm purposely leaving those details out for now, as that would sidetrack our present purpose. What I am attempting to demonstrate is that death exists during the millennial kingdom, but not afterwards. Practically speaking, you shall see how the two cities are in mutual partnership before this is over. Let's go over to part 3, on earth as it is in heaven. And now we get to the good stuff. You see, Those who claim that the Yerushalayim of the Millennial Kingdom is the same as Yohannan's New Yerushalayim miss out and ultimately confuse some very important details. Understanding the working relationship is as simple as acknowledging a line from Adonai's prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. The Yerushalayim which Messiah reigned from during the kingdom can most likely be pinpointed on the map directly below renewed Yerushalayim. But again, that location is the topic for another outing. I simply want to help you form the picture. Yahusha was dictating the will of heaven upon the earth from one Yerushalayim to another. It's really that simple. It would furthermore behoove you to recall that Yahusha's building of and ruling from the temple in Ezekiel's earthly Yerushalayim aims to direct our attention as to what purpose the millennial saints mutually play in the narrative. They are a kingdom of priests. See for yourself. Revelation chapter 5, verse 10. And you have made them a kingdom and priest to our Elohim, and they shall reign on the earth. You probably knew that already. If so, then I've just offered a refreshing peppermint. I can't assume, though. It needs to be established that the co-ruling priests of Messiah's kingdom below had a mutual working relationship with heaven above. If I'm being repetitive, it's only because Yohanan often repeats himself. Apparently, we need reminders. Yah knows we forget easy. Well, the entire priestly narrative plays out in chapter 20. So I'll read from Revelation 20, verses 1 through 5. 1 through 6, actually. And I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season. And I saw thrones, and they upon them that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahusha, and for the word of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Mashiach 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power. But they shall be priests of Elohim and of Mashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Again, Revelation 20, verses 1 through 6. If the idea was that the resurrected saints were to reign with Mashiach for an eternity, then it's rather strange for Yohanan to claim 1,000 years only. Somebody out there on the internet is just itching to tell me it's another metaphor. Sigh. Let's put it this way. If the resurrected saints rule with Mashiach forever, then when do the remaining children of Yasharel enter the picture? Exactly. The 1,000 years are literal, complete with timestamps. You see, the resurrected saints are here identified. Those who rule with Mashiach are the very souls who were beheaded for follow along, the witness of Yahusha, and for the word of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. Had New Jerusalem descended to the earth before the beginning of the kingdom, then it might be said that all Yasharel, from the beginning of Adamic history to its end, would also be ruling alongside the apocalypse saints. But no. Before you argue that the mark of the beast is spiritual only, and so every son of Yasharel in history is included in the co-rulership from Adam and Seth onwards, notice what Yohanan doesn't say. He does not include those who are written in the Sefer of Life. And that is because being written in the Sefer of Life is a definite qualifier for the resurrection and entering New Jerusalem in heaven, but is far too broad for the 1,000-year co-rulership. Was Moshe beheaded for refusing to worship the beast? Nope. He is written in the book of life. But according to Yohanan's definition, Moshe and Abraham don't make the cut. Unless there was an exemption to the rule, then I think it's safe to assume they weren't co-ruling with Mashiach upon the earth. Notice that Yohanan doesn't say crucifixion either. Plenty of saints were murdered in an atrocious manner. nor did he say those who were fallen soldiers in the war, or contrarily, living true to our father's commands until a ripe old age. Lots of them doing that throughout history too. No, the beheading is directly related to rejecting the beast, presumably in an allotted time period. The beheaded is a repeated theme throughout Revelation, and a narrative which, I can only conclude, official history has now hidden from us. People point to a prophecy in Zechariah to prove that New Jerusalem has already descended to the earth before the gunshot sprint of the Millennial Kingdom, but that's just wrong. The only proof is that their wires are crossed. We're once again dealing with two separate Jerusalems, but I'll let you read it for yourself. So this comes from Zechariah 14, verses 16 through 19. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yahuwah Sebaoth, and to keep the feast of Sukkot. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahuwah Sebaoth, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Mitzrayim, Egypt, go not up, and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith Yahuwah will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast of Sukkot. This shall be the punishment of Mitzrayim, and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the feast of Sukkot. And I really missed a big opportunity here, guys, to address the fact that when New Jerusalem comes down, it's so that the Father can tabernacle with men. And here we see men are supposed to go to Jerusalem to tabernacle. So, interesting connection. These nations have already come against Jerusalem and were apparently successful in its destruction. It's why Mashiach had to build a new city and temple complex. Are you telling me that those sinners are expected to enter New Jerusalem? Yeah, no. The quick and easy answer is that's not happening. And yet it says right here that everyone is expected to go to Jerusalem each Sukkot to worship the king or face the curse. Simple deductive reasoning informs us that Ezekiel's city is once again being described. Observing the Feast of Sukkot during the Millennial Kingdom is not so dissimilar from observing it now or any other time in history. We do so to align ourselves with the dictates of heaven because we love the character of Yahuwah, our Heavenly Father. That doesn't mean we're entering heaven. Not yet, at any rate. We're simply walking in the light of it. That's precisely what Revelation claims, by the way. Revelation chapter 21, verses 24 through 26. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. It doesn't say the nations of them which are saved shall walk into the city. Rather, they walk in the light of it. Those are two completely different actions. We're dealing with that on earth as it is in heaven theme again. Are you capable of walking in the light of heaven? Why, yes, you are. By walking as Messiah walked and obeying Torah, the mortal nations are actively moving in the light of renewed Jerusalem, whereas only the kings of those nations may enter. If that were being the picture, if that were the picture being described in Zechariah, that sinners are expected to enter the city of Elohim, New Jerusalem, during the autumn feast, then it would be inconsistent with the rest of Scripture. Continuing, Revelation 21, verse 27. And there shall in no wise enter it anything that defiles, neither whatsoever works abomination, or makes a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's Sefer of life. There it is. I was telling you about it earlier. The qualifier for entering renewed Jerusalem is to be written in the Sefer of life. That's simply not the qualifier for being a kingdom priest, though. Narrow is the road, and yet the Sefer of life is still too broad of a term. Yes, they are written in the Sefer of life, but they were also beheaded for keeping the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahusha and being beheaded for it. That then begs the next question. How exactly do you know someone is written in the Sefer of Life? You'd have to preserve until the end, of course. That's essentially what Mashiach tells us in Matthew 24, verses 12 through 13. And because the transgression of the Torah shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Everyone else will be thrust into the lake of fire. Revelation 20:15 says, and whoever was not found written in the Sefer of Life was cast into the lake of fire. I mean, you could argue that everyone is written into the Sefer of Life until the very moment when they're dead and scrubbed out of it, but that would then be terrible logic for qualifying one's entry into New Jerusalem. It's like I'm expected to believe a mortal sinner could enter through one of its 12 gates on the proposition that he or she hasn't died yet. Ridiculous. By the way, people love to leave out the first part, where Mashiach defines endurance and salvation by counterbalancing the abounding transgression of Torah, you see, on earth as it is in heaven. The populace which refused to enter Jerusalem for Sukkot were breaking Torah. Those sinners had yet to endure until the end. Therefore, they couldn't say with assurance that they wouldn't be scrubbed from the Sefer of Life. Contrarily, there were those who did endure until the end. We are told in Revelation again, Revelation chapter 2, verses 26 through 27. And he that overcomes and guards my works until the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. The ruling priest endured. There's no other way around it. Only they were granted access into New Jerusalem. It's like Yohanan can't say it enough. He tells us again and again and again and again, and still the dispensationalists refuse to listen. Here's what he says again. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs, and sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whosoever loves and makes a lie. There's, I should have commented. There are so many people who loves the lie of saying Torah is done away with. Got to throw that in there. Only those who do his commandments will be granted access to the tree of life. But don't overlook the second part. Only those who do his commandments may enter in through the gates into the city. And this is a future promise, by the way, not a present one. Only makes sense that everyone else would be rejected. I mean, if the sinful nations were granted access to New Jerusalem by dictate of the king, then aside from the obvious, polluting the city, that would create other problems entirely. Like, what if one of them happened to eat from the fruit of the tree of life? Yeah, that's not happening. There's a reason why sinners were forcibly removed from paradise in the first place. It's in Genesis, opening chapters. We read, and Yahuwah Elohim said, behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eats and live forever. Therefore, Yahuwah Elohim sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the the tree of the Garden of Eden, cherubim and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way of the tree of life. Genesis 3, verses 33 through 34. I have the most, just so you guys know, I have the most mistakes in the scripture passages because I actually typed them all out. I make a habit of that. I don't copy and paste anything. Amazing how these same themes continue unhinged throughout scripture. Sinners cannot enter New Jerusalem for the very reason why Adam and Eva were driven out of paradise. Don't you find it odd that New Jerusalem is described to us as a city with very high walls? Perhaps I'm reading too much into this, but it's almost like Yahuwah is attempting to keep certain influencers out. And it had a great wall and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Yasharel, Revelation 21:12. I never noticed that until now. The 12 gates have an equal number of angels to guard them. That's badass right there. They probably have wingspan capable of fanning an elephant over and flaming swords and everything. Wouldn't need weapons, though, not for humans at least. Any mortal who gazed upon one of those sentry guards would slap their face upon the concrete faster than a Christian could claim that Torah has been done away with. If New Jerusalem were on the earth, do you seriously think the sinful nations of the world are getting past the bouncer? I don't think so. Again, only the co ruling dignitaries are granted permission to enter. We see another such example here. Revelation 22 1 through 2. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of Elohim and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bore 12 manners of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Notice how it never says the fruits from the tree are for the healing of the nations. That's because we have already seen in Bereshith, Genesis, precisely how the fruit delivers. It brings about immortality. Another problem for everyone not found written in the Sefer of Life. Therefore, the fruit is only ever offered to the resurrected. Perhaps the leaves are ground up into a fine dust for medicinal purposes. Who really knows? From everything we've seen, particularly with the example given in Revelation 21, 24 through 26, simple deductive reasoning should inform us that the kings of the earth enter the city to gather the leaves for the healing of the nations. The very fact that the nations needed healed tells us that sin was involved, and we know the sound of weeping or crying will never be heard in renewed Jerusalem. The defining difference, however, between the Melchizedek king priest and the sinful kings and priests of Cain is that we are expected to serve the sons of Cain, whereas Yahusha set the perfect example by washing the feet of his disciples. This is what it means that the least will be the greatest in his kingdom. The kings of the earth were granted entry above in order that they might serve the people they ruled over in the earth below. In their former life, while still mortal, they had learned the trick of the trade, which is the righteous way. Their ministry as kings over the nations would be exemplified by being servants to all, as seen in the life of Messiah, but even before that by Moshe. So we read in the Targum Deuteronomy chapter 34, "Blessed be the name of Yahuwah of the world, who hath taught us his righteous way," which is Torah. He hath taught us to clothe the naked, as he clothed Adam and Eva. He taught us to unite the bridegroom and bride in marriage, as he united Eva to Adam. He hath taught us to visit the sick, as he revealed himself to Abraham when he was ill from being circumcised. He hath taught us to console the mourners, as he revealed himself again to Yaakov when returning from Padan, in the place where his mother had died. He hath taught us to feed the poor, as he sent Yasharel bread from heaven. He hath taught us to bury the dead by what he did for Moshe, for he revealed himself in his word, and with him the companies of ministering angels. I just love that, how it says all of those qualities right there were revealed by his word, and that describes Yahusha perfectly. Like everything we know about him, that was him. If the co-ruling king priest journeyed all the way to heaven to retrieve a leaf which might heal their nation, then I think it's safe to assume that, as representatives of the Son of Elohim, they embodied these qualities of servitude. They clothed the naked, they visited the sick, they consoled the mourners, they fed the poor, they buried the dead, they even united men and women in marriage. Hasatan was imprisoned. His confederacy of angels was outcast, as we've seen in past discussions. The Edenic vision, which sprung first and foremost from Mount Zion, where Jerusalem stood, would have been beautiful to behold. Unfortunately, it can truly be said that the nations of the world wanted the benefits of everything Yahusha's government of Shalom offered, but they had no love for the Father. To gaze into his face is to perceive Torah. One last thing. Earlier, we read in Revelation 21:3 that Elohim will tabernacle among men. The context, of course, is the arrival of New Jerusalem, another clue. That is describing Yahuwah, the Most High Elohim, answering our prayer by uniting heaven and earth once and for all. Beforehand, he has always sent his word. That's what it says in Deuteronomy Targum. He revealed himself in his word. The same can be said of the millennial kingdom, of course. But now, finally, the Most High will literally unite the two into one singular space. That's what the coming of New Jerusalem entails. And it doesn't happen during the millennial kingdom because Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharel, will not congregate among the souls of sinners. Before heaven and earth can be united once and for all, only the ashes of sinners will remain. That is why it can truly be said in 2 Peter 3:9, Yahuwah is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. All right, guys, that's it for now. Hopefully you guys like that. Hopefully you can still hear me. Hopefully my mic is still working. So what did you guys think?
Yes. Yes.
I like the detail that you jumped into. I'm gonna be trying to be summarizing it here, but I'll talk more on once I summarize.
When are you going to summarize?
I've been taking notes. I'm gonna check them out and then comment on some things.
Okay. Yeah, I never made that connection until I was writing this week. And when New Jerusalem comes down, he says that, Elohim is here to tabernacle among men. Now, I get it. I see why there's so many wires crossed. Why people say, no, the millennial kingdom is New Jerusalem. Hopefully I made a case that there are two different cities. But I never made that connection before, that the people, why is it that Sukkot is the one where it's, of all Torah, like all the things you could disobey in Torah, why is it Sukkot the one that they will be cursed? And it's as above so below thing. Like when New Jerusalem comes down, it's because Elohim is tabernacling among men. So that was the first I ever saw that connection.
Well, what makes sense here is that, once again, as you've made clear, and others, is that during the Millennial Kingdom, that didn't mean evil was done away with. Satan
Right.
and them were done away with for a while, put away, but people, it was still under their under that influence. Not everyone was, like you said, following Yahusha. So that, as you've described, that would then mean that we're not talking New Jerusalem yet. We're still talking Millennial Kingdom, but we're not talking New Jerusalem, because New Jerusalem gave us the reminder that there's going to be no more evil when New Jerusalem is here. And as you said, because that's the tabernacle with Yahuwah, we're going to be living with him, and there's no evil. And that's
right.
Where. That's why the lake of fire, as you said, burnt into a crisp, gone for good. And that's hallelujah. That's like, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, where's the where's the argument against that, in terms of putting things aside, whether this is true or not? Some don't want to entertain that idea. But it's almost going to our ultimate death, as you were saying, the second death, because this is getting real, guys. This is the final one that we're talking about. So this is where you got to really get right. And I keep just thinking celebration.
Yeah, I would like someone to make a case for me. I'm not saying you guys have to, but I would like someone to make a case for me as to why because they use that verse with Zechariah that it's proof that when people are supposed to go to Jerusalem to tabernacle, that's proof that New Jerusalem is here. And I want someone to make the case for me why sinners are ever allowed to go into New Jerusalem. If everyone is commanded to go, then how are sinners getting past the sentry guards, going up in the gates, going up to the tree of life? How is that even happening? And I just think
So
that's
as you,
completely
everyone
inconsistent.
go, guys, there's no more sinners here. What does that mean? Yeah, all that have chosen evil are going into the lake of fire. They're no longer here. That's why all can now.
Yeah, correct. Anybody disagree? anybody anybody think that I totally did not stick that landing and I fumbled and I can take it? Any added thoughts? Anything else that stuck out to you?
Hey, no. So I'm thinking about Jerusalem here. Well, not here, but Jerusalem back in the days of Yeshua. I'm thinking you had centurions walking around. You had these other guys. You got Samaritans coming into market. I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's the possibility that kind of like Solomon's porch on the temple, right? You've got an area where just any old dude can hang out. Then you've got areas where there's a holy of holies. I mean, can they just walk in? I mean, Mike's got a point about that. There's no more sinners, but I don't know. Is it a possibility that they could just kind of walk around like the Hasatan comes before the throne of the Elohim? He's not really hanging out there a lot, but he's just visiting. Maybe, I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I don't. I just can't make a case at all. That's what I would ask. So if somebody can not theoretically, but actually show me in scripture where, um, aside from saying, well, that passage of Zechariah is proof. Like, show me uh, where the sinner is ever allowed to enter into the Holy of Holies. And I think that this is a lot of the confusion with the new covenant. I have shown in past work that the qualification for us, at least, the qualifications of the new covenant aren't there. The very fact that we are teaching each other shows that the new covenant is not in place for us. It has been enacted, but it's not there.
And
The fact that the Torah is not written on our hearts, that is another qualification. And so, my takeaway is that you can only enter New Jerusalem if you're in the new covenant. If the Torah is written on your heart, which means you're resurrected, which means you are a you know you're either resurrected or the word resurrection. We're kind of playing around with that a lot because we've seen in the book of Adam, the Gospel of Nicodemus, and other books, and I gave that presentation about that. Said that was a resurrection, but it can't be. There might be something kind of missed in translation because there's two ways that resurrection seem to be. I've been putting a lot of thought in this. There seems to be two ways that resurrection is presented in Scripture. One is that the resurrection coming out of Sheol, going to paradise. But then there's also the physical resurrection on this earth, which we saw tonight. And yeah, what were you going to say, Rob?
I was saying amen to what you're saying there, but there was something I think that would add to that when you're reading from Revelation 20. Blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such a second death has no power, but they shall be priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So all of the resurrected are priests of Elohim. So they obviously are able to go into the kingdom in and out and so forth. But to your point with the sinners, I don't recall it stating that anybody and everybody can go in there, but I'm going to keep looking at that to see if I can find anything specific.
Okay.
So that
Now,
was, that was just a hypothetical. Really, is what I was putting out there. But
Yeah, it's fine.
I do think that there's more than one type of resurrection in a typology scenario. Just like there's more than one type of rapture. Enoch obviously was differently raptured than Elijah. It was differently raptured than Yeshua. But I mean, the resurrection of the body, the resurrection of the soul slash spirit, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I completely see. And even in different time periods, we have different resurrections.
So
I mean, just real quick, for instance, like the resurrected who got out of their graves when Yeshua was killed on the cross, right? That is most definitely a different resurrection than what I'm going to have. Most definitely a different resurrection than what someone who gets beheaded will have. Most definitely a different resurrection than Abraham had. I mean, obviously.
right. So when we're when I'm looking into this millennial kingdom stuff, and sometimes when people have all the answers, and they're really hard to deal with, and they've got their doctrines in place, and they're
Hey, I'm
oh.
right here. You don't have to talk to me like that, okay? Again.
But if you guys have seen me kind of adjust my position a little bit here through the weeks, some people will see that as a sign of weakness. What I'm simply trying to do is I see this puzzle before me, and I know this puzzle piece. Okay, it doesn't go over there. I'm going to kind of put it in this lump, but then nope. Okay, it connects in this other place I didn't even see before, and a few weeks back when I did the thing on the Odes of Solomon, and as a refresher, I see the evidence that the Odes of Solomon is written by these kingdom priests who we learn more about tonight. And they talk in there about having access to paradise. This whole time they're like writing about the grace of Elohim. Like we know you're sinners. Just accept his grace. Like if and the church perverts grace to no end. Like they treat it like, oh, this is the age of grace, so I can do whatever I want. I can sin, and that's grace. Like no. Grace is like, you have sinned, and you repent of it, you turn around, and Yah goes, yeah, I'm going to forgive you. I'm giving you grace because you messed up, but you're fixing it, right? And so these kingdom priests are telling people, look, just accept his grace. And but they all have access to paradise. Now, in the Odes of Solomon, I never found an ode where they said they had access to New Jerusalem. And I had said at that time that I speculated that they did. But the case is still, it strengthens when you add the two and you see that they actually did have access to paradise and the other people didn't. So you do see them going up there and coming back down.
So, no, you're saying that the Ode of Solomon was written by the resurrected saints?
Yeah, so if you go look at my presentation, now I haven't published.
Hold on. So that would be a millennial book that had come out during the millennial?
Yes, so if you listen to my presentation, it's like a 4-hour video, but it's the first 2 hours where I read from my paper. I haven't published it yet, only because it's 70 pages, and like formatting that is a nightmare onto my website. I might just drop the PDF in there, but my conclusion reading that is that I take you through the evidence, and I only go through like 12 of the odes out of I think there's 42 of them. But so there's the other odes have more to say, and I tried to kind of give it a well-rounded look. But according to the odes, the Antichrist had already been defeated. The seven-headed dragon had been defeated. Messiah came with a rod of iron and destroyed the bad guys. The people writing it were identifying themselves as people who were resurrected. They were witnesses in Sheol when Yahusha came down and freed them. They had been to paradise. I mean, this is really bizarre literature if you read it from any other context. It doesn't really make sense. It's like, what is this? And so, yes, that is my contention. And actually, I believe that it was written probably closer to the end of the millennial kingdom, when they talk about their persecutors, that these persecutors have been rising up against them. And the last psalm or ode. Ode 42 is from the perspective of Yahusha. I don't know if he wrote it physically or if it's just his perspective, like you might see in the Psalms, like David would write from his perspective. But he talks about how he's going, because of these persecutors, he's going to hide himself, and that these Gentile nations will no longer see him, which I think is fascinating. And so my takeaway from this is that the camp of Yah, it didn't. It's almost like the movie Brigadoon, if anyone remembers that. It had Bing Crosby in it. I think it was Bing Crosby. And it came back, it came out like, probably 70, 80 years ago now. And it was about, it took place in World War One. And these two hikers are going like through the Swiss Alps, and they discover this village called Brigadoon that only appears like once every 100 years, but it only appears for one day. And then I'll give away the ending. Bing Crosby falls in love with a woman there, and he decides to stay behind at sunset, knowing that when he goes to sleep, he won't awake for another 100 years. But it's this idea that like Jerusalem, or what I would say the camp of Yah, is still with us. It's still here, but it's hidden from us. We can't see it. Now, Satan has hidden it, and Yahusha has handed us over to the desires of our heart, which is darkness and disobedience, and to not, darkness cannot perceive the light, right? And so, yes, I believe that that's how the odes end. It ends on a kind of a dark note.
So have you heard the theory that the millennial reign was a 40-year reign, not a 1,000? That it's hyperbole, that it is given in such a grander, because it was such a great period of time that they stretched it. They made it 1,000 years when it actually, from the time of the crucifixion to the tribulation, 70 AD.
I've heard a lot of these, and I just so you know, I'm not a preterist. People try to lump me into that, and the problem is that at the end of the day, preterism always just says it's all metaphors. It's all just metaphorical. The numbers don't matter. All this kind of stuff. I run into the same problem, by the way, with Enoch's calendar, because I've pointed out to people take Enoch's calendar and they go, oh yeah, the first 6,000 years are legit, but the next the next few weeks, that's all metaphorical, because they can't reconcile the fact that the timetable actually looks like the world came to an end about 500 years, 500 to 700 years after Messiah, according to Enoch's timetable. So I would find it really odd that if the millennial kingdom is only a year, that Messiah comes, reigns. Again, you'd have to say it's metaphorical, it's all spiritual. He comes and builds this temple in Jerusalem according to Ezekiel for 1 year. I take it all literal. I believe that it is a literal 1,000 years.
In your presentation, you said that our timeline is only 200 years.
Yes.
All right. Well, they have coins that are minted up with the letter I on them, and 600, 500, various years, 700. And the I is supposed to represent Yeshua, because they didn't have a J to say Joshua or Jesus. So how do we explain that?
Well, so when I said 200 years,
From what I understand, our timeline is probably around 1,200 years, where the reset happened in the quote 1800s, and we're 400 years removed from the year 1800, or 300 years, 1890. Yeah, we're close to 220. So we're somewhere around 1,000 years AD. 1,020, if my math is right, which it probably ain't. So how do we explain those? And there's artifacts with dates on them, like a desk.
Not read any of the, have you
So-
not? You got some of the research that has already been out there, not just Noel, but many of these questions you have brought forward have been looked at from different angles to whether, as you just described, right? If you take
Right.
it the way you just described, well, we're at those years that you surmise. What
Okay.
we're saying is more like Noel's going, and we've explained the coin that doesn't do away with the 1,000 years. It covers up the 1,000 years.
So what I was saying by 200 years, contextually, was that society as we know it is only 200 years old. Okay.
From the 1800s. Okay, I got you. I
Yeah.
got
Yeah. Everything.
All right.
The automobile, rocket ships, computers. Everything.
Our history is literally only 200 years.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I need to look at, like, say, how many years after the flood was Abraham born? That's really interesting because like, if the flood was a reset, then we're kind of like living closer to the reset than even Abraham was. Like, you could see how quickly they could create the technology for the Tower of Babel, when you just look at how far we've come in 200 years, right? So that's what I was meaning by that. In terms of a timeline, you know, I'm non-committal to this because there's still so many questions I have. But according to numerous timelines that I've looked at, see, this is where I'm not a preterist. I am not saying that 70 AD was the start of the Millennial Kingdom. Okay, according to Enoch's timeline, according to the book of Adam and Eve.
I'm saying that 70 AD was the end of the millennial reign, the
Oh.
end of the millennial kingdom, and short season, and that we are in the kingdom age, which is an eternal age.
Okay. Yeah. So
Evil, but then that's where we go. It couldn't, because there's evil still we know running around on the earth.
They just have no, like he said in his presentation, they will not look Yah in the face and acknowledge him. So that is evil.
Right, but at a point,
we still have a choice when we're born to either look Yah in the face and accept his love and his forgiveness and his everlasting kindness, his absolute goodness, or we have a choice to reject it.
Right. And so there's a point where this is where we're saying you finally reject it. You're going to go in the lake of fire. You're not just going to be, outside the gate, so to say. You're going to be once and for all. And that's what is shared in the word. And so that's what we're saying. That's what's coming. Because one, we say it's as Revelation, the short season that Satan's been given rule.
Yeah, I actually thought that too for a while, that we were in the short season because there's a lot of signs with all the deception in the world. I mean, everything we've been told is a lie. So there's that, and there's a whole lot of things in Hollywood that would suggest that we are in the short season. So yeah, I understand where you guys are coming with that at.
You know, I don't believe the 1,000 years to be metaphorical. I don't believe the kingdom to be spiritual. I believe it is all the prophecies. Like, you would have to show me all the prophecies of the Messiah coming. They're all physical, just as assuredly as Messiah came the first time physically. It wasn't spiritual; it was physical. The prophecies of him ruling from David's throne in the land of Israel, in Jerusalem, is physical. It's not spiritual. And so, yeah, I can't see that. It's just, for me, it's completely just, yeah, it's not there. I saved this question towards the end because I didn't want to derail what we've been, talking about translation and Yahusha in the Hebrew. But you had mentioned a few different times in here Zion, and they were messianic passages about where he would rule from, that he would physically rule from Zion. And then you had made a couple comments in there about the real estate that they call Holy Land. Now, earlier this week, I did put a survey in our Discord, one of the chat pages, and I really wasn't sure how people would respond. And I've been thinking through this a lot myself. I wasn't looking for people to give me a certain answer, and I certainly hope they didn't just say what they thought I wanted to hear. But I asked in there, do you believe, basically an ABC answer? Do you believe that the land of Israel is the ancient Holy Land? Yes, no, or I don't know. And it seemed to be overwhelmingly, those who responded said that no, that they do not believe that the modern state of Israel is the land that was spoken about in the Bible. That actually really surprised me, there was that tipping point, that many people responded that way. Um, I am curious, and I'm not looking for any specific answer. This isn't like a I'm not looking for like the Knowles version of the politically correct answer here. But what are your thoughts on that? Because you distinguish Zion that's being talked about, because when I think of Zion in context to the land of Israel as it exists today, you have the city of Jerusalem, and then you have the city of David right there, which is also known as Zion. So, and that's usually what most people seem to reference. What are your thoughts? Like,
Well,
where was your mind going with that?
well, I'm leaning toward the I don't think so more than the I don't know. Um, I've read some fascinating articles about the location. There is I think you can find the historical record where they were actually thinking, when they were going to create the state of Israel in 1948, they were actually thinking about putting it in Texas.
That would be
Uh,
correct.
and so there is actually artifacts in the Grand Canyon that are Egyptian, absolutely Egyptian. One person said that the Mississippi might be the Nile, because it actually has, when you think about all the tributaries that it has, that it actually could be that, since everything's upside down. Does that make sense? Since we know the true biblical cosmology, that north may be south and south may be north, and of course we believe now that maybe Yeshua himself may be what we would consider the North Pole, but the center of the earth. Also, there's a place in just above the Grand Canyon. It's called Zion National Park. That's here in the United States. I've heard other people saying that maybe Australia, others that it's Africa. I'm not sure of the where, but I'm leaning less and less toward it being the piece of property that is considered the Holy Land. I'm leaning less and less. I'm not saying that it's the United States. I say that the United States, North America, should I say, North America is a possibility, but so is Africa. There's other possibilities other than the real estate over there. So I'm leaning more toward the I don't think so than the I don't know.
Yeah, that's really incredible to hear you say that, because uh, as I talk to many different people about this, you know most basically all truthers can accept that the moon landing never happened. That's a given. Another one is that September 11th was an inside job. But then you start narrowing the window, and there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that has to be fought with. And so then you have a lot less people who believe the earth is flat. But there's still a lot of us that believe the earth is flat, that we live in a flat, motionless, enclosed realm. Um, but then, as you keep going further and further in, one thing that's really, really we're talking about this millennial kingdom thing happening and the mud flood, and so a lot less people can accept that history is a lie, because people love history. And that's hard for me. It is so hard for me. I struggle, like, guys, I struggle with this because I love history, and it's hard for me to just toss it out. But people tell me, even people who research mud flood and believe it's legit, who can accept all these other things, they say, nope, nope, I'm not crossing that line. Israel is legit. It is a legitimate plot of land. And that is hard for people to get there. Um, and but once you see the illusion, that the sleight of hand, how easily they basically, in the late 1800s, as the Zionist movement was growing, this is post mud flood, they were literally looking for a land to put their holy land in. They were looking to Africa. They were looking to, I think, upper state New York. They were looking, of course, to Texas. They were looking all over, and you're like, wait a second, wait, no one was inhabiting that land over there. Why didn't you just go over there? And you go over there and you see, like, Jerusalem by 1900, just like a little flea market in the desert. And so you could just totally see how they can just plant all those things over there, and it was really, it's a great feat, no doubt, but it's easily done. Anyways, I was just kind of curious because um, if as we look into this idea of Mashiach reigning from Zion, it would mean his holy mountain, which I believe Zion is the same as the mountain of worship that Adam and Eve were on after they were expelled from Eden. It's one and the same. It's like, where is that mountain? Because it's not in that land they tell us over there is Israel, but it's got to be somewhere here on the earth. So, anyways, I didn't want to
Yeah.
go off on that rant. I didn't mean to go off on that rant. I was just kind of
No, no,
curious
that
about your
that's
thoughts on that.
no. I kind of I kind of touched on it. I didn't really get deep into it, but I did touch on it, that and I put that in there on purpose, and that may get me some more flack. Um, uh,
Yeah,
how
it's
dare you?
that the well, the realm of possibilities out there, like, yeah, I mean, North America could be Egypt. Some people suggested that it was the promised land, but then again, South America could be Egypt too. I mean, you look at the whole, like, extinction of the Mayan culture and the Spanish conquistadors coming over and stuff. I mean, that could just be a whole cover for the destruction of Egypt. Like,
I've seen this. I've seen somebody else draw a map, and it was like, wow, this is a stretch of an imagination. But he was like, once again, as some of us says, is maybe they're actually hiding what is actually the shape, not just the shape, but the shape of the continents, where things actually are. Now, some people who have sailed and done some things have, pointed out like, nah, that's not correct. But the thinking and the way that everything is much closer. Once again, it was bringing things closer again, going, this world is not as big as we've been led to believe. But it got us into that thinking again, like, okay, we've seen that this is a distraction. It's like, look over here, look over here. And we're like, wait a second. So we know not to look there all of a sudden, but where, like you guys said, there's a couple different possibilities. But one of the things that I'm reminded it of is somehow things ain't as spread out as we think they are.
Well, just I mean, we've been looking at, I think it was Dave. I don't know if Dave's in the chat right now, but he's put a lot of stuff out there about the shape of the earth. If you look at ancient maps, um, the shape is different. I went to St. Augustine, and I was looking in fact, I bought a replica of an old map from the 1700s, and the shape of Florida is, totally different than what we see today, um, in that little marble that they put out there, that the United States is huge, huge, and Africa is smaller than the United States, and how they distorted it. how they've distorted the shape of the world, how they've distorted the shape of the continents. Whether you think that it's smaller or larger, I personally think that the Earth is probably a lot larger than what they're saying. They keep saying, I mean, this is one of the reasons I tend toward that, because they say, oh, we're overpopulated. We don't have enough resources. Well, that tells me that, yeah, we've got plenty of resources. Yes, we've got plenty of land. If you've ever driven in Florida, it's like mile after mile after mile. You drive in Texas, the land is so flat, and mile after mile after mile, you're all alone. And it's huge. I personally think that it's huge, so huge, and there's so much resources out there. They're saying, oh, we've got nothing. The shelves are going to be bare. There's food everywhere. You just, it's all around us. You're just overlooking it. And that's what we've done, I think, about the shape of the earth, about the true cosmology, about the location of the Holy Land. We're and we get this cognitive dissonance that we can't. It's such a lovely idea for us that we don't want to let go. As Noel said, I love history too. I just love it. And then to learn that so much of it is a lie. I grew up, my dad loved Westerns. The Old West may be a big lie. That was tough because, you see John Wayne, and Gary Cooper and suddenly you realize, well, the Old West may be a lie, that the New World was actually the Old World. It could be.
And then you come to realize that all those early cowboy actors were all Freemasons too.
Hey, Noel.
So Dave, go
Hey,
ahead,
Noel.
Josh.
This is actually Chase.
Oh, hey.
Hey, first time in the chat. But yeah, that topic of where actually was the land of Israel. One of my favorite topics. I've been talking with a friend now who's studied the same kind of stuff, John McTemis. He does some pretty in-depth stuff on it, and he was sharing even clips from when Mark Twain visited Palestine, and just it's almost comical because Mark Twain's commenting, so I'm here, but this doesn't look like anything in the Bible. And he's like, this is really disappointing actually, because I was imagining, kings and temples, and it's just kind of some poor, people in shabby clothing with goats, and then some. He continues with studying like the size of the land there, and if you add up the amount of cattle that the Israelites had and the amount of space that's there really wasn't enough room. And if it's called the land of milk and honey, look at what it is today. I know things could have changed geographically. The land could have been completely wrecked and turned into desert. But right now, the state of Israel can only really survive off of irrigating the land and importing food. So it's not really a land of like plentiful today. But I don't know if that's evidence enough to look at where is there plentiful land. And we do in America have plentiful farmland, some of the best in the world. And the other thing we talked about was, the land of the Amorites was to be given to Abraham. And Amor, the word Amor, or Amory, sounds a lot like America. So they're like putting a few of these pieces together. Nothing completely solid, but I would really love to figure it out before I die.
So I'm going to be talking more about this in the upcoming weeks. And this is one of the reasons I brought it up. I'm trying to
Awesome.
gauge where everyone is on this. And I'll give a few more observations before I address where I'm kind of going with this. I see a lot of problems with modern Israel. I've heard people talking, if you just take the land of Judah, the tribe of Yehuda alone, you count up all the cities that they talk about, they wouldn't even fit in there. So you have, if you look at the land of Israel, it's so small. It's almost like LA and Orange County. If anyone is from California who's been there, and you could visualize what LA and Orange County look like, it's sizable, but it's very small. So you fit 9 to 10 of the tribes in there, and then you have the Jordan River, and then you have 3 tribes on the other side of the Jordan River. Well, these tribes go all the way up to Euphrates River. If you look at that on the map, that's 500 miles. And you're like, wait, what? So these other tribes get this little tiny land, and then they get all the way up to, to Babylon, up there to Iraq. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. And you start tracking where things like where David was running from Saul. And he's running all over, and the armies are chasing him. And then you look at the map, and it's this little tiny section, like, just through the woods. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. So there's just, you can go on and on and on. There's a lot of, I feel, problems. And you could see how, they sent over a major, Agent Mark Twain in the 90s it was, when they were preparing their Zionist state. And, another high-ranking Freemason, and they started bringing over the map makers to try to figure things out. And anyways, people are going to accuse me of just moving the goalie post on this one. But Dave and I have been looking at, let's just say that everyone here can visualize the AE map, that the circular map that for the last 7 years, within the general mainstream flat earth movement we've all been working with. I do believe that that is legitimate, but only partially. I actually don't believe, I shouldn't say I do or don't believe. I am highly speculative that the land of Israel, including Zion, is not on any continent that we currently know about. All right. Now, let me first say that if you take a globe, we can see that the northern and southern hemisphere are the same size. According to Neil deGrasse Tyson, he would say the southern hemisphere is a little wider at the hips. But all that to say is, we all know the problems with the flights in the southern hemisphere and why they can't be done in many cases. Well, that's because on our AE map, the southern hemisphere is way bigger. There's a lot more water down there. There could be missing land. Keep in mind that NASA controls all flight paths. Most people don't know this. NASA controls all international flight paths. So there are places on this earth in the southern hemisphere that we are not allowed to go, including the northern. However, this is going to blow up in the flat earth movement. It's just now gaining momentum, and it's amazing. And the more I look at this, I'm like, this is legit. And I will be talking about this more in the future. The moon map. Everybody needs to look at the moon map. And what the moon, if I am now under the impression that the moon is, maybe you could best explain it as a negative image that was perhaps taken on the 4th day of creation. Remember, the land comes up on the 3rd day, the moon is created on the 4th, and it may be capturing a moment in time of what the earth actually looked like. Um, so you can see on the moon map. Now, keep in mind, in the book of Job, it says that the earth is clay under a seal, right? And so everyone knows that verse. And the idea is that a king would have a signet ring, and that he would put that stamp into a clay to seal a letter, but that would be his signature. It would be like, this is my authority. No, and so what Yahuwah is saying is that the earth is his signature. This is his authority. Don't mess with this. Don't intrude on it. This is his, right? And so the moon may actually capture what that signature, that seal on clay was on the 4th day of creation. And it's fascinating to think about. So on the moon map, you actually see the AE map. You can see North and South America, Africa, Asia. The big seller for me was that you can actually see in the Pacific Ocean, you can actually see the lost continent of Atlantis, which would have sunk after that. I had placed it in the past before creation, and that would have been wrong. It would have sunk before the flood, or during the flood, or whatever. But here's the kicker. On this map, which is very legitimately accurate of the AE map, it's freakishly so. Everything we know about this realm is only about 1/3 of the total Earth. Okay, when Admiral Byrd talked about land beyond the pole, he wasn't kidding. Like, there is a lot of land. There is way more land than we know of. And what I'm suggesting is that the actual Zion, the land of Eden, the mountain of worship, the Mount Zion, the land that Jerusalem was ruled from, is north of here. It is in a land that we have that has been darkened for us. When you guys heard my presentation on the Odes of Solomon, and it ended with the fact that Yahushua wasn't necessarily going anywhere, but he was going to be hiding himself. There's going to be the shroud of darkness, and people would be in the darkness. I think that that's what happened. And so Dave and I talk about this a lot, that there's like, there could be a whole civilization up there, completely different civilization. They have their own history, everything. They know nothing about us. We know nothing about them. Satan still controls it up there because he surrounds the camp of Yah. But it's just a crazy thought. Like, they have their own languages, their own histories, everything, their own technology. But yeah, so that's something we're going to be kind of looking at a little bit more. And it's a total trip. It's just going further down the rabbit hole.
So what we're assuming here is that, based on the AE map, what we consider the Arctic Circle with the North Pole, however big what they're saying that is, which is relatively not that big comparatively, but what you're saying is that center is bigger than we think also.
Yeah. True north would be further than what we would call our North Pole. Before we get caught up in that, I did want to thank Pamela for doing an amazing job. And if anybody has any other thoughts or questions or comments or concerns about the presentation, now would be a good time to bring it up before we go off in this. And I also, because one of the complaints I do get a lot is that we go so late and nobody knows when to close shop. So I want to touch on Zion, because it was coming up a lot in tonight, and the map and everything. Pamela, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just like I said, when I was doing when I was earlier, I said this is just a small part. What I presented tonight is just a small part of what I've found, because there's more in more of the Psalms of Yeshua. I mean, Rob was bringing out one thing. He was talking about that the priests would be clothed with Yeshua. I didn't really bring that up. There's so much, that I didn't even bring up. So many more Psalms that you cannot accurately say that Yahshua HaMashiach does not appear in the Old Testament. That is inaccurate. That is an inaccurate statement. And people need to recognize the fact that many of the translators, I think Lisa spoke of this kind of thing, where someone comes at the text with a preconceived notion. They're looking at the text, and they've already got it in their head that this is what it's saying. It's just like, say, for instance, the word firmament. If someone comes to the table looking at the Hebrew text, and they don't believe in biblical cosmology, they don't believe in flat Earth, they will say expanse. They'll use the word expanse instead of firmament for rakia. So if we recognize the fact that these prejudices are there, and that they do come out, and I try to keep but I have prejudices. When I'm interpreting, this is, I'm trying to let the text say what the text says, but it's really hard to get yourself out of the way. But I just go look at it yourself, check it out, make sure that I'm correct, and if you disagree with me, talk to me. We'll talk it out, and if I'm wrong, I'll say so. So I hope you, and I thank you all for listening, and for all your words of encouragement. Thank you for showing up so late at night and for giving 2.5 hours of your time to this subject.
Well, Pamela, thank you for staying up. Pamela and I were talking about this because just so you guys know, I'm not a night person either. I am not a night owl, and I have to drink coffee to stay awake, and then I can't go to sleep, and it's awful. My Fridays are just like, what happened last night? Um, anyways, yeah, thank you for coming. I always look forward to your psalms. They are beautiful. I really, and I mean this. I really, really enjoy reading them. And if society continues on, as Sarah and I, my wife Sarah and I always say, we plan each day like it's our last, but also we plan for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And um, but if we go on and it's however many more years, I think you should consider actually turning these psalms into a book that people can actually just sit down and read, because it's phenomenal stuff. So, Rob, you said you had something you wanted to throw in. Maybe not. Okay. Well, on that, we'll just go ahead and Polly, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Robert or you, but I just kind of want to go back a little bit to Israel being in the desert, and I just wanted to throw some information that maybe no one's heard yet. So my mother is buried in the Chihuahua Desert, and the Chihuahua Desert's approximately 1/12 of the size of the continental U.S. And there's, I just looked it up real quick. There's 5 million people living there, and the Chihuahua Desert's about 200 million square miles, and so that's 40 acres per person. And it was too coincidental not to say something or anything. And I just really wanted to give that information out there because that kind of blew me away right now, right here, just when she said that. Because my first knee-jerk reaction is to say, nope, Israel is Israel. And I'm like, well, but I'm teachable enough to go through my cognitive dissonance. But anyway, just wanted to tell you that real quick.
Okay. Well, we are going
Can you hear
to
me?
Rob, if that's you, I can now hear you.
Oh, okay, good. I I just wanted to add, as I was listening to Pamela, some things came to my mind that I think a lot of people struggle with, is where she was talking about Ahaya and Yahuwah, the names. There's purpose for these names, there's meaning for these names, and the names and titles being used throughout scriptures, I think, confuse or trip people when they're looking at these things. And when she was bringing up the vine and the netzir, the branches, we see that Yahusha is referred to as the branch, but then we're also looking at the scriptures where we are the branches and he is the vine. And so if we're going to assign specific titles or names to specific people, and not be able to be flexible with what the scripture is trying to convey, I think that is where we or people get confused with these titles and names, to where they can't see it in more facets, in that, like you mentioned, that 4D chess, you can't see it in a multifaceted way. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting tripped up on these things. I just wanted to bring that up and see if anyone else may agree.
Well, what you said about the name. This was before I came to the understanding that his name was not God. His name was not Jehovah. Someone said that there was 360 names used. It's like combinations of, and you think about a circle, every direction, it's like every direction he's something, in every direction you look. He is Yahuwah Rapha, the one who who heals me. And then to Hagar, he was the one who sees me. And to Abraham, he was the one who provides. So you have that. We think of in terms of, my name is Pamela, that's it. Pamela Glasgow, that's my name. But his character, a person's name is not just, just a title, just a word attached to that person. In Hebrew thought, it was their character. And so when you're looking at the name, whether it's Yahuwah, I am he who breathes life, or Ahaya, I exist. This is a facet of his character, and he is, of course, beyond anything that we can comprehend. And we're giving glimpses of his character and his course of life, his manner of life. And these are part of his character, and to try to pin him down with just one name is, in my opinion, a mistake, because he's so much more. And even, it says in Revelation that Yosha, he's going to have a name that no one knows. Well, because he's beyond finding out. We can't comprehend all that he is. So that's my thought on the name.
That's really well put. Thank you. That's excellent. Okay, well, with that, Pamela, I'm just going to go ahead and officially. I'm not saying we can continue talking about this all we want, but I wanted to officially end this now. It is 11:30 by our current time, and I'm just going to go ahead and pray, and then we can continue talking throughout the night. And I know a lot of us probably want to talk about this map, so I'll go ahead and pray. Our dearest Father in heaven, thank you for just revealing yourself in your word, and it is your right to conceal a matter, and as it says in Proverbs, it is the glory of a king to seek it out. We pray that um, you would give us eyes to see and ears to hear. And I know that I think I speak for everyone here that we want to know. We want to know your truths. We want to know more about you and learn who you are. So thank you for revealing these things. Thank you for Pamela and all the wonderful research she put into this. And amen. So thank you again, Pamela.
You're most welcome. It was my great honor, to be among so many learned scholars, because there's so many of you that have done so much research on your own, and I feel like I'm this small person in amongst all these great researchers. So I appreciate the opportunity. I feel very honored and very humbled by this opportunity. And thank you, Noel, for giving me this chance and for letting me, put my things out there, for letting me have the opportunity to publish the Psalms. I was writing them for myself in a bubble, and thank you for the opportunity to share them to a wider audience than just myself.
All right, good. Good. Now, I think earlier I may have cut you off, Mike, and I apologize if I did that. We
No,
were
that's
talking.
fine. So what's up? What this map that you got, that Rob and a few of us a couple months back now, what have we been being shown is, again, the Earth, the shape, but I think more importantly, and we've been talking about what's next, is where's the true location of Israel. And I think, as you said, maybe it's in a land we're not, we actually not have access to. That would make a whole lot of sense, that they've been hiding its true location, like, again, distracting us, saying it's there, and then thinking, okay, it's not there where we're looking, when all of a sudden it's in a place we actually can't look.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be real careful about letting my imagination get the better of me. But you just look at that map. If you go up there, you can see all the potential. There is so much potential about what could be going on. So again, Scripture tells us that Satan surrounds the camp of Yah, and he's taken over the four corners of the earth. So I have to conclude from that that if that land up there is populated, that he is also deceiving those people up there. And there might be very good reason for his deception to work, why he would want to split up these two societies. And yeah, so I had a thought I was going to say, but now I forgot. So the way I am currently thinking this works is that we talked last week when Lisa came on about the full moon being the new moon, and I'm inclined to think that that is correct. She gave a very good presentation on that. Someone would have to show why she is incorrect, because at this point in time, she gave some excellent information that I can't really deny. So that being said, that gives more um, uh, lends more credence to this moon map, because according, if it's true that the full moon is the new moon, it means that at the creation of the world, the moon was full. In fact, we read in the Aramaic Targum that because of the false report that the moon gave to the sun, the light diminished. That confused me at first when we were reading that, but it finally occurred to me, oh my goodness, it's because the moon started going through these phases. It was never intended to from the beginning. Now, those might be fighting words. Lisa's contention, or her point, is that the feast day, she feels the same way, not because the Targum says it, but she says that the feasts were because of sin. They were, are coming before Yahuwah and bringing your sacrifices, and that, the appointed time started after that. So that's really interesting. And then we of course read in the Gospel of Bartholomew that the moon was a representation of Eve, the son of Adam, and so you could see how that interplay works there. So all that to say, if the light, there was no sun and moon for the first 3 days of creation, right? The first day is the light comes on, there's water everywhere. The second day, the firmament's created, which separates water above from below, and I believe this is Yahuwah's way of separating heaven from the earth. At one time, earth and heaven were connected. The third day, the land appears out of the water, and I think that's what we're seeing in this photograph. It's so what the moon may be is like a negative image. The dark spots, in the moon would be, on a positive would be white, and it, the also the it may be actually two images overlapping, one in which you can actually see the shape of the firmament on it, which gives the little bit of the roundness, spherical look to it, which is really fascinating as well. But I almost wonder if this is a snapshot of the earth before the sun actually separated the light from the darkness, into like 24-hour segments. When, there was just light everywhere on the earth, then it got dark, and then light everywhere on the earth, and then it got dark. And that the photo was taken. Does everyone see what I'm talking about? Like, if you were to look at an AE map now, it would be half the earth would be dark, half of it would be light. But I think this is capturing it right before that happens. So, yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I think it's captured, and this is kind of why I talk about when the time before Enoch and the time after Enoch, or the time before the deluge, or the time before Peleg, or the time before Hezekiah or Joshua 10. So we've had our, and you have to throw away every Darwinian evolutionist thing that they have ever said, right, from science class in the 8th grade and even before. And you have to say, okay, well, all right, if I go for these great big divisions and I'm looking at this snapshot of the moon and the moon's reflection of what was perfect, okay, even then you have to say, okay, was it the snapshot before the moon had the false report against the sun? And so we know that yes, Atlantis is gone, and the great city of Is, spelled Y-S, Atlantis. Hundreds of other places that have disappeared. The pyramids underneath the Bahamas shores. All these places are gone, changed, transmogrified. So, to me, it's completely plausible. But I have one firsthand experience of crossing the Terminator, going from LA to Indonesia. That is the only reason, or only change in my acceptance of this. Like, I've been across the Pacific and I've been across the Atlantic. How does that qualify inside of this new thinking? And I don't know if anybody, or Mike D, can answer that, or if you can, or somebody can help me understand.
I'm not sure what the complication is, because the rules still apply on this. Like, the circuit of the sun, you can see the circles going around over the green, which would be our section. The sun and the moon still pass over in the same way. I mean, the rules still apply. Like, the sun and the moon is not extended over the whole thing.
Okay, then if I see, now I understand the white circles, which I didn't before, but I understand it now. Is then the magnetic north, is that middle dot on the quote unquote known world?
Yeah, so the black dot on here, I believe, if I'm reading this map accurately, is supposed to be true north. So you can see where the North Pole is. It's kind of like that white area in the middle of our AE map, but true north would be further up.
Right. So we're ignoring the geology of today, where they say there's two norths and two south poles. We're just going with magnetic north is the actual north, quote unquote true north, correct?
Yeah. Well, there are two North Poles, right? And that's the point of this map. I'm not sure what you're seeing
Oh no,
differently.
well I meant like on their globe, in their world, they have the two ideas that there's a real north and then there's a true north. And
Yeah.
so throwing all that away, we're going with the idea that where his toenails are, that's the North Pole, etc. Correct?
Where his toenails are?
Okay,
Because
if I look at this, I've been trying to wrap my mind around this too, Paulie. And I'm glad you brought this up, because I'm like, okay, how does this make sense? And now I just think of it. If you look at it, as Noel shared, the white is the center of our so-called AE map, but the true north is there. And then if you look at that line, there's no where it almost like connects with the south. Like the you see what I'm saying? So it's like almost like, wait a second. This is where it gets weird for me. It's almost like, well, whichever direction you go, I'm going north. I'm going. So it's almost like it's weird that wrapping your mind around that photo.
Right. And Noel's saying the AE, for those who don't know what that is, it's the azimuthal equidistant from the quote unquote North Pole projection. So when you look at the quote unquote, what they say, the flat Earth map, that's the AE projection. And as I'm understanding it, you spin it a little bit and you place it flat down on there. And the North Pole is in the middle, where Mount Nehru or the footstool or whatever you want to call it is. So if I'm okay, no, I accept that. So if I'm going straight west from LA to, if I fly over Oahu and then go to Indonesia, I'm following the curve of this planisphere, and I'm headed directly west, but it's in a curve, right? Because it's on a flat surface. Is that? I'm still all right. I'm still lost. I mean, I'm an intelligent person, right? And I think you all know that by now. If I'm not wise, then I'm a wise ass. But I still need some technical data.
So
Please help me.
this is where we're going. This is the way the land used to look, partly, right?
Right. I prefaced that before, like all of the changes that have happened. Like if this is the true projection from before, like the instant the moon took the snapshot from the instant Yahuwah said, or sorry, it is so, right? The instant,
Right.
right? So that this is the oldest version of a map that we have. So if I take what the world looks like today and place it over, it's going to be different, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the
Right.
disillusionment, or sorry, the
So
disillusion of Atlantis,
what,
etc.
what's interesting is where, like we said, whether the southern oceans are bigger than they are. What I'm getting there's land beyond the south, what we would say away from the center, Antarctica beyond the ice ring, that direction, or outward direction. But now when we're looking at this and we're realizing it's bigger to the north or to the center, that there's more land there, now I'm trying to wrap my head around, okay, now how does that juxtaposed with, it's almost like if we go this direction, we're going south, but if we go to the center, it's opening up. You
Right,
see what
and
I'm saying?
let's call it the secondary north because it's not north as it were for us because we all have a working compass somewhere in our house. We're all pointing towards the middle as we understand the AE projection. So if this is the middle, so a secondary middle would be that other dot that's in between the lands that are known and the lands that are unknown. So here's a question. At the time of the transporting down from the New Jerusalem, does it land in Texas? Does it land in this new area? Does North Pole, quote unquote pole, you know what I'm saying? Does the North change? Does it move? Right? Which and again, my mind is being upset. My mind is exploding. So I'm not gonna have an aneurysm like Pam alluded to some of those priests, but woo-wee.
Well, I will say, Noel, I'm looking forward to digging deeper into this. I've shared with Michael that I've been researching this for over 2 years, just as not deeply, just like uh, surface level. And I was very excited to hear Dave jumping on board with this because I seem to be the only one that uh, was thinking about this theory, and I'm glad that you're gonna dig deeper into it. So I
You've
know I'm
been
pretty excited about it.
you've been holding out on me, Rob. I did not know that. So just so just so I make sure everyone's on the same page, because I'm looking at the map that Rob has dropped in here right now. So you can see the green there. That's our realm right there. Okay. So hopefully everyone, if you look at like 1 to 2 o'clock, okay, so of our realm, you could see North and South America very clearly right there. Now, there are researchers who have looked at this and they have actually mapped out all the countries and they have shown you that how accurate this actually truly is. Yes, there are some changes over the years, clearly. So if you go to 3 o'clock, you're going west and you go 3 o'clock, you can see that huge landmass there that no longer exists. That's Atlantis. But this is what really sold me on it. That's exactly where people think it was. Right there, kind of where the Hawaiian Islands are now today. That's where like the monolithic, cities underwater are, and that's where it probably sunk. But I wanna show this. So if you can go back up to like the 1 o'clock and you can kind of see North and South America there. If you were to jump on a flight from New York, JFK, and you were go over to Europe, it works out exactly the same on an AE map, and this is the very problem why we see that like people flying from like Africa to South America, they first have to go up to London or Paris or whatever, and then back down because they have to refuel. They can't make it across the ocean. It's too big of a gap. But you basically you go over the North Pole there. You go up north and then back down to Europe. You keep as far away from as possible from this whole yellow section. Nobody goes near that. It's not it's unless if people can show me flight paths. From what I've looked at from the flight paths, they don't allow you to go anywhere near there. And there could be good reason for that.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you're looking at the green, if you click on the map and get it zoomed in and you look at the green, no matter where you're flying, you're not going to go near or across any of that yellow or
And that's
brown area.
and there's thousands of miles of oceans there that are probably untouched. That like,
Mhm.
and Dave and I were joking about this. We're like what if we could I probably shouldn't say this on air, but we have, talked about actually getting in a boat and sailing, like a 6-month trip trying to find land up there. And we were talking about like what, you would get in a boat and you would sail and sail and sail and sail, and you're running out of food, you're running out of water, out of supplies. And we're like, okay, we're at the point of no return now. Either we need to turn back now or keep going. And you keep going, and you're like, you're almost out of food, and you're like, we're going to die. And then all of a sudden, this like boat comes up, and there's a guy with like a machine gun, and we're like, oh, we're dead. Like this is it. Like we've gone too far. But then the guy is, you find out, is like the Coast Guard, and he comes to rescue you, and he takes you to shore, and all of a sudden you show up, and you're like, wait a second, this isn't our civilization, and it's like completely different. Um, like one of the things like the possibilities of this are endless. Like, I think this was
Hey,
the plot.
Noel,
Yeah, well, let me finish. This was the plot line to the Tom Cruise
Voyage of
movie.
the Dawn Treader.
Well, Voyage of the Dawn, but this was the plot line to the Tom Cruise movie Oblivion, where he found out there was another version of him in another society. Um, the um, if you guys have ever looked at like all the time travel photos, apparently of people showing up post mud flood, and they have like cell phone technology and like digital cameras and stuff like that. It's really trippy stuff. We were like, what if those people are like, you know, they did space travel like 100 years before us, or whatever, and like some of the people came over. You never know. I mean, that there's just this is where it just opens up so many possibilities.
So basically,
Okay,
there's a whole lot more of Yas people here, somewhere else.
Well, what I'm suggesting, okay, is that now a lot of the people who look at this map, you get into the Prague clock, and they will suggest that it's actually all darkness up there, and there is no sun, there's nothing, it's just icy. I can't know that offhand. What I do know is that it says in Revelation that Satan surrounds the camp of Yah. Okay, he goes over the plains of the earth, and we talk about Israel being scattered into the four corners of the earth. So that tells me that there are. It would tell me that there are people up there. Okay, that there are people up there. That whole section there, the yellow, that's like all like squiggly line crossed out. There would be people up there that are also deceived, just like us. That there are people up there that are the children of Yah that are obviously following his ways. You see what I'm saying? But somewhere the camp of Yah has got to be somewhere in the center there. That's my thought.
Oh, I
Uh,
like it.
Zen Garcia talked about the same thing, that Mount Meru is or the mountain of worship is somewhere in the center of the earth. He talked about being the North Pole. All we're doing is we're taking that same concept, and we're just kind of moving a little bit further north and saying no, that land is somewhere up there. And keep in mind, it wouldn't look exactly like that today. It would change a little bit. Some of the continents could have been sunk, just like Atlantis. We really don't know. We don't know how much is still up there.
okay, I have a big question. Okay,
Yeah.
if I take the AE map and overlay it, I find an ice wall, and a lot of the ice wall is around the perimeter of the, as this picture looks, to the north, the northwest, and the northeast. So is there an ice wall barrier? Is it dissolved on the other side, and then it becomes drier and greener? Do they have a secondary sun? How does the ice wall function work in that? Because I want to understand. Not I want to believe the truth, right? But I just don't know how it all. And I mean, I don't know if Rob has looked at that as well. So just an open question.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Polly, this is a lot to process. I'm still processing it, and there's a lot to this. So remember that map that came out, that was supposedly made in the 1650s or in the somewhere in the whereabouts. It came out in 2017, right as the flat Earth movement was really taking off, and it was that clearly AE map that they put into strips onto a globe, but they showed Antarctica all the way around it, and that was pretty shocking because Antarctica wasn't supposed to be discovered at that time yet, and yet clearly in this century they knew what Antarctica, that there was all this land there. Also, it wasn't covered in ice and snow, so I sometimes wonder. I do believe that the Earth is a circle, and that there are barriers or boundaries to it, as we see with the ice wall. Do I know that it is ice and snow all the way around? No, I don't know that. I don't have a clue. When you actually look at the access points to Antarctica below, what is it, South Africa, South America, maybe people access it below Australia, but there aren't many access points really when you think about it for all that land. We really don't know. We really don't know what is all there. It's a mystery. So it's one of those things where what the flat Earth movement did is that it showed us that the globe is fake. We live on a flat enclosed realm, and we got a lot of things right. But as these things go, you find new evidence that you have to discard some of the old evidence. And I'm not saying this moon map is legitimate, but I've been sitting on this for a while now, and Rob has been sitting on it apparently for 2 years and holding out on me. But uh, it's just the more I look at this, more I think about this, I'm just like, this is amazing. This is really amazing stuff.
Right, and I saw it. I guess being on my Facebook, I'm a part of every Facebook flat Earth group, and a lot of them are shield groups. But I saw it a year ago, 2020, and I just like Josh's picture. And no offense, Josh, I didn't mean to put a poopy emoji on there, but you just call it chocolate ice cream if you want. But I first of all, like when you sat down at my counter and you started talking about mud flood, I laughed right immediately, like Sarai. I laughed because I didn't believe, right? But then more and more information, more and more information. But I I guess how do I phrase this? If there is an ice ring, if we do know that Admiral Byrd's testimony is true, because why would he lie? He had no reason to lie, and they assassinated him for it. Is if it's and it's just on that small perimeter, right? So if you're gonna go on a journey and you're on your schooner or whatever you're gonna get, I'd suggest a sloop with the front jib. Anyway, and then you're headed west, and then at some point you had a little bit southwest, and you're off on your navigation. And you get there, you're like, well, how did we get past the ice wall? Where was it melted? Where was it not secured? Where was there a gap? And so that's my biggest concern is how do I get past what they're telling me on the AE map, even the Mercator map from the 1500s or whatever. If there's the north, and then I'm supposed to go off a little bit from the north to get to this locale. Jeez, I don't know, man. My mind is mush. I'm just gonna shut up.
What I wanted to add is that when I say I did the research on this, I was doing it more like entertainment when I wasn't doing scripture. I was just, this was entertaining me, so I wasn't going deep to trying to figure it out myself. But some things that came to mind when I was reviewing this stuff is, how does the sun and moon exist in our realm, and what about this other land masses and so forth that are out there? How do they get light, etc.? So if we think about the black sun, we see the eclipses, and I don't think anyone here believes it's the moon passing over the sun. I don't think that's even possible. But let's say it's the black sun that actually goes in front of it and blacks it out. Well, is that truly a black disk? Is it a black hole? Is it just darkness? Or is that one side of the sun for the other realm, and we see the black side of it, and it comes over and blocks out our sun as it passes in front of it or something? So things like that make me think, like, what could be possibilities for that? Could that be one? I don't know. Maybe yes. I don't know. We know our sun goes through channels, as Enoch says. It goes through these gates, and these gates are, when it comes to its end of its gate, then it passes through another. How does that even work? How does it shift, etc. So there are some things that we may not fully understand or know. So I could venture to say there's even more out there that is unknown to us. We have to speculate, just like I know I did when I first researched flat Earth. I had to speculate a lot to think about how's this even possible, and then slowly through deeper research, you start finding out some of these answers. Do we have them all? No, I can say that definitely not for me, but enough to see it for what it is not being taught to us or shown to us. So that, and then the other piece is, uh, when another thing that makes me think is, I don't know if you guys remember a book, a story that was written by an explorer. I think it was late 1800s, maybe. The gentleman traveled somewhere on towards north, on a boat. I think it was him and his son, and they ended up meeting another race of people, spent some time there. I can't remember how long he spent time, and then they came back, and I believe the father died, the son lived, and then he kind of shared his story, but then he had to recant it because they said he was crazy. But he did end up sharing the story before he died. So I don't know if
Yes.
anyone. Okay, you heard that one. Okay, good, because I mean that
Yes.
could be a possibility of this other land out there. He actually went too far beyond north and discovered it. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
on your first
Just
note,
some thoughts. Just some thoughts.
I had
Just
never
the
put that
concept that
together.
we can go too far north. See, that's like, I'm like, all right, my mind doesn't want to accept that, but I'm like, wait, that sounds great. How can you
Mhm.
go too far north? I'm like, hey, wait a second, that's it's ringing a bell, because this is where Paulie and me were saying, we're trying to wrap our mind around that. How come it doesn't want to? But just by saying that, I'm like, that's revealing.
Mhm.
okay, so Rob, you've done the research on some stuff, and I refuse to call it Ketu and Rahu, but I will say that biblically we do have that he created the sun and the moon and the stars also. So that one small snippet of that one small verse, we know that there's stars, and we don't know that we can see all the stars. So I'll say in that vein of sola scriptura, there's stuff out there that's not the sun and the moon. So there we go, whatever you want to call it. So okay, so in that subgrouping, we have the possibility of a secondary flat disk that's a moon facing them, and it shines or doesn't shine towards us, but shines towards them, and that eclipses.
Yeah,
and
think about the term. Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to I'm sorry, I just want to interject because you're on a certain topic, and think about the term that's being used, like by NASA and others, the dark side of the moon. Think about that. Maybe that's what we're getting on this other disk. We're getting the dark side of it. But go ahead.
So in our mind, we understand that as a secondary object from our understanding of the moon. In their mind, they're trying to say it's the same thing.
Right.
So, and a secondary sun shining towards them, because we haven't ever seen. If you ever think about it, we've never been shown the other side of the sun. We always think we've been trained to think it's a sphere, but could it be a disk? I'm of the opinion that it is a disk, and just like the moon, that it's a disk.
Agreed.
But we've been trained to think the other way. So it. Yeah. Oh, and if anybody has that information on that secondary thing you were talking about, the man traveling to too far north, quote unquote, that Mike was wanting to look at too, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I might have that in an article. I need to dig that up. So I just put a link in here for Sefaria, which is an amazing source, guys. If you've never, this is all everything you want to know about Jewish thought. And I just did a search in the Targum, the Aramaic Targum, on sons, plural, and a lot comes up. Genesis 2:2. And Yahuwah had finished by the seventh day the work which he had wrought, and the 10 formations which he had created between the suns, plural. And he rested the seventh day from all his work which he had performed. We see between the suns, plural, for the
Yep.
assembly of Israel in Exodus 12:6. Numbers 28:4, between the suns, plural, to atone for the sins of the day. And so it just goes on and on again, all these lists of sons in regards to Israel. So I think that's worth pointing out that in the Aramaic Targum, they had an understanding that there was more than one sun. And keep in mind, they it's clearly distinguishing between stars and suns.
Well, you see
Yeah,
that
I looked
video
at,
I just shared, and he goes about that's, and then we got the black hole sun symbology. And if you look at that image that's shared on there, you'll see a binary system that they're proposing, that there's a binary system here. We're in this one flat realm, and there's another, a blue and a red, and good and an evil, light and the dark, or blue and a red. But you can see it, and as that sun comes around, it that's where maybe why some people are seeing two suns now sometimes at certain and he shares in this video, at certain points you can see where those two systems, and you see in the map the binary system, there's a center where they like a bit Visca Pisces, maybe not quite overlapping, but there is. And that could explain something, like you were just saying, there's more than one sun.
I would need scriptural evidence about two discs to rule the day. I can see where the two suns would be the quote unquote sun and the moon in that mindset right now, but I couldn't see it as two balls of nuclear energy or whatever they call it. You know, again, I really test and go back, and even Benuziel's Targum, I don't know, I'll test it against what I have from the Protestant canon, in the Septuagint from Leningrad, or the Codexes, whatever, against the Dead Sea stuff. Just as a, because man, you know, I always want to agree with Scripture, and yet I don't only find myself not agreeing sometimes. So I'll be like, you know what, I'll submit. So I submit to Scripture, and until I get more evidence, then I can agree with Scripture. But I always want to submit. But I for now, I'm of the opinion there's one sun, as we understand it from the creation standpoint. Is this sun reflected on the other realms? Sure. You know, are they seeing a mirror image, just like we see the aurora borealis? We see the aurora australis as a reflection from the aurora borealis. You know, could it be that there's actually a secondary object creating it? I don't know, but I do go back straight to the scriptures and say, well, I can only find one, and so if this phraseology of two comes up somewhere else, they have to be talking about something that's already been shown before. So, in my opinion,
I
it would
like
be
how you shared
the
it. And
secondary
that's
or
a
the lesser
great,
sun.
yeah, that's a great thing to always go back to, Paul, because for many people who don't have this foundation to really to ground themselves in,
Well, and
we
it's
can
and it's
go
not,
every which
yeah,
way. You've seen us. We're
every
flipping over there, and then you're like,
right.
hey, hold on, come back down to earth for a moment here. And
I
that's
know,
so
and
important.
that's the
And
thing
then
with
to look
truth,
at it
Mike.
from this other with the biblical perspective, which isn't shutting it out, but showing it, well, if we look at it like you said, there's maybe a reflection. There's, like, I want to say, a carbon copy of it, and
Yeah,
an
scripture
altered
is
image.
always scripture. It's our understanding that's wrong, right? So
Right.
we have to change our understanding. We have to mold ourselves into the mind of Elua. I'm sorry, Pam, I'm murdering how you said that. We have to mold ourselves into that mind of Yeshua, Yahuwah, Yahweh. And so again, like I said before, and like I've been having said every day, in theology practices, when something, a doctrine of man comes up, and even a doctrine of understanding of my mindset, because I don't live in his days. I don't know what Enoch is talking about in Enoch 72 and 73, where he talks about the paths of the gates of the chariots of the sun. I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? But I'll go with it, you know. So I don't understand that, but I'm willing to believe it if you can prove it to me, Enoch. So if it's Enoch or Julius or Jasher or whatever else, even if you can prove it against the standard bedrock of Genesis, yes, sir, I will submit to that, and I'll agree with that eventually. You know what I mean? And so, no, I don't mean to disparage your ideas in that. It's just that I'm persistent, annoyingly persistent, so to be steadfast and true to what the bedrock that I understand the bedrock to be. And if I'm wrong, well, then I'll get to heaven and be judged. But at least he'll say, hey, what, you were persistent. You were dumb, but you were persistent. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But I
don't
think
know that.
please go
I
on
don't.
that.
Well, I was going to say I don't know that you're going to be judged for being wrong. I think that that's unless if someone could show me scripture on that every single thing we're wrong on we're going to be judged. That's kind of a scary thought. I I think that one of the reasons now we talked in here tonight, and Pam talked about it in the presentation how Yahuwah has hidden himself from us. And when we look around at the body of knowledge, and especially now as we're rediscovering many things that were lost, not for nearly as long as we think. I only think, I look, it's crazy now that I think civilization as we know it only started 200 years ago. Like we're closer to the start of civilization than probably Abraham was when he was born, if you think about it like that. But, um, there, being wrong is almost part of Yahuwah's plan. I have to be careful how I say this, but it's to keep us humble, right? It's almost like it's a test. Like how many people can he get into a room that claim to be his children and disagree on something and still get along? And so, because if we all just agreed on the same thing, it would make it easy at that point. But that's just not the way it works. And so what we have to obviously repent of or be judged for is how we respond to having different conclusions or disagreements with other people in the faith. Hopefully understand,
Amen.
and hopefully everyone
Amen.
understands what I'm saying by that.
Man.
When we get to Rob Skiba just died, and I'm assuming that if he wasn't put to sleep after 7 days that he actually went to paradise. I'm sure he's getting all this information now, and he's like, dang, I can't believe all the things I missed, right? I don't think he has to repent of that. I don't think that's a fair statement. So anyways.
No, I'll put myself in submission under that testimony. It's a challenge that I have personally. I think being a logistician and an intellectual, that the knowledge I have that I'm responsible for, and I'm like I really, and that's why I hesitate so quickly to say no. Every single time see something new, I'm like nope. Until you can prove it to me, nope. And so it took me so long to come to, let's just say, uh, Nephilim, even though I was literally raised with that whole idea in church about the other world, and never hearing the Sethite point of view until I was post college. I was like, well, obviously, but when Rob Skiba, talking about our man, presented to me from the thing he did, the Archon Invasion, which I think is actually archived. He's changed it. But pre posthumously, he changed it before he went. He gave me all this information about the Archon invasion, and as did Michael Heiser about the Council of the B'nai Elohim, and I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute, let me rethink everything, and so it's rough, and I think especially for those of us who pursue in the academia of the scriptures, to say, this new information sheds the light this, but then when forced with a hand of new information that backs up against scripture every time, you are forced, and that's why I differentiate wholeheartedly between submission and agreement, because I'll submit to the word, but my mind's like no, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, just that's my personality. I disagree because I don't have enough intel yet. When I finally get there, when my mind finally agrees with my spirit man, then I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Then it becomes a reality. I wish it wasn't so. I wish I could just go along with it, but I think there's a bonus that I don't, in that the steadfastness of the faith is accruing in me, and giving me dividends, because of my steadfastness, and the basis of that is the word, is Torah, is life. Torah is life.
Okay, so let me.
As go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Oh, I thought you were finishing your thoughts. I just want to jump in here. Let me just show you where I'm going with this in my thought process. Now, you're a researcher, I'm a researcher. At any given time, I am presented with any number of rabbit trails to pursue. I have a stack of them that I've never gotten to, right? And for one reason or another, I decide to pursue one thought or another. Sometimes years will go by, like as you know, Polly, and I don't know how you totally feel about it, but I have gone all out serpent seed. I've gone, as you know, feminine, Holy Spirit. Those are things that I sat on for probably 4 or 5 years. Well, no, more than that, closer to 7 years, where I was just like, I gotta really see a clear case for this before I can pursue this. Other times, um, I start to pursue something in order to find out more information about, like, the Millennial Kingdom. I sat on it for a year and I'm like, well, this isn't going anywhere. So I'm just going to start looking into this more and more. And if it's an error, if it's wrong, then hopefully I will be shown that and shown why this couldn't possibly have happened. And I'll just drop it. Right. So that's kind of how I feel about this. I've sat on this for a little while now and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to start looking into this. And if it is wrong, then it's wrong. Then I'll pull away from it. But, sometimes I can't really know unless if um, there's not really there's not a body of work done on this. I can't go to the local library and say, I want to look up the moon map, right? And, St. Augustine has to say on the moon map, right? So, it's just one of those things that you have to feel out, right? You have to, start fumbling around on this thing and figure it out. And when there are questions about that, that's what's so great about it because, um, you know, uh, it's like this Millennial Kingdom thing. I've been really frustrated over it. I've been telling Dave that every time I have somebody brings up a question, like they'll be like, "Oh no, where's New Jerusalem? I can't see it." Right? So I gotta deal with that, and I start looking at that, and I come up to my satisfaction. I'm building a case right now that I will present as to why, uh, clear cut case, New Jerusalem will not come down to the end of the Millennial Kingdom. Clear cut case, in my opinion. But once you solve that, then it creates whole new issues, and it's like, oh man, I just solved one issue, and now I got three new issues I got to deal with. But that's how this pursuit happens, right? So looking at this moon map, there are some frustrations about it. It's like Bob Nodel's famous coffee cup illustration of how light travels around the firmament. I don't know if you can really use that anymore. There is a lot of things that, like, if we use this, we got to throw out things that have been established that we thought were good. And so I get that. I get that there's going to be some immediate questions and complications, but as you start looking at it more, and start wrestling with that, we're going to start solving things and figure out if this is legit or not. Hopefully. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. And I think you know my heart, and you know me more than everybody else here probably. Looking around the room, and being a researcher, being subservient to the word and the ruach, it's a challenge every day. When you come across something new, you put it in kind of a filing cabinet in your head. And you're like, okay, well, this sits here for a while, but uh you have to, I have to, I'll just speak for myself and not anybody else. I have to be careful when and where I pick stuff up. That's why I don't hang out on Facebook anymore, but I will preach there. That's why I don't hang out in a church, but I will go to set an example. um but I do hang here, and so my trust level, as it were, is raised here. And so anything that Pam, Whitney, Pezzy, Rob, Rebecca, Oath, Noel, Mike, Leona, Josh, Hank, Deborah, or Chase said, not Craig, sorry Craig, but anybody says to me, I'm going to put into a different filing cabinet and say, this I'm going to accept with a smaller grain of salt than I did the other stuff because of where the source it came from. You know what I mean?
Know what you mean. And Noah, I wanted to follow up with you on that. Is that when I came to the research in the flat Earth side, I mean, that was one of the long ones for me to accept. I mean, I had, as Paulie was saying, that one I have to see it in scripture, I have to prove it, I have to all of this stuff that one took me a while because there was still a lot of unanswered questions. And but what it did prove to me through that research is that it what we experience is not what we're being told and what I was taught in school and so forth. So there I knew there was a lie, but all of the flat Earth diagrams and so forth, I still was not fully settled on saying, "Yep, we got it all figured out." I mean, I'm thinking maybe 60%, but I still was on board with that angle. So when I came across this other research of the moon piece, I'm like, well, here's another aspect that could answer a few more of these questions that I know I have out there, but it's even more and more postulating where unprovable, so to speak, because we don't have the possibility of and the funding of NASA to go and explore and prove these things. So I'm open.
Well,
I'm on all those aspects.
one thing that really, a lot of scripture verses have been jumping out at me when I've been looking at these, and one of them comes from Job, where Yahuwah is challenging Job, and he's saying, pull up your loins like a man, right, and answer me if you know. And he says, can you measure the breadth of the earth? Well, apparently Aristosthenes was capable of measuring the breadth of the earth, but with this, you can actually see, like, when he's asking that question, he's like, Yahuwah has set up the earth in such a way that it cannot be measured by man. Does that make sense to everyone? Like, it can't. It can't possibly be measured by man. For all we know in history, there has never been a time where man was ever given, able to cross the whole earth and, all those continents and everything like that.
I mean, unless you count Enoch, but he never really gave us a good map. He wasn't really supposed to be a cartographer, but he was supposed to be a messenger.
Yeah.
I wish he would have solved a whole lot of problems, but man, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I find it interesting that many times we hear cartographers or when they talk about mapping, they say, "Oh, they mapped the known world." So that's interesting when they use that term.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of all I have to say on that. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot as I'm dealing with the um the New Jerusalem, situation. And it's interesting because, I'll be making the case either next week or the week after, because that's the challenge whenever we talk about the millennial kingdom. People start looking around and go, where's New Jerusalem, Noel? I'm supposed to be able to see it, right? And I'm going to be making the case of two things. That uh, the we know that the modern Jerusalem over in, the real estate of Israel is less than 1 square mile, just under 1 square mile. It's a very small city. The Jerusalem that is prophesied by Ezekiel, if those measurements are accurate, I mean, the conversion. I could be off on this, but it appears to be 10 square miles, which is a pretty sizable city. Eerily enough, Washington D.C. is actually 10 square miles. I'm not saying that they're at all related, but then we know, New Jerusalem is somewhere in the radius of 1,500 square miles. And so the Jerusalem that Yahusha is reigning from during the millennial reign clearly is not the New Jerusalem. And I can make the point that, one, all the pagans, the goyim, are or all the people of the nations are commanded to go into Jerusalem for Sukkot. And I'll be showing you that prophecy. You guys already know where it is. However, New Jerusalem is different in that only the kings are allowed to go into New Jerusalem in order to get the leaves for healing to take back to the nation.
Mm.
So sinners, the non-resurrected sinners, are not allowed into New Jerusalem, but they're all commanded to go into the 10 square mile Jerusalem. Also, we know that there is death during the millennial reign. as Isaiah says, it's a rarity, but there is death. Whereas when New Jerusalem comes down to earth, there is no more death. So the reason why the millennial kingdom saints have access to New Jerusalem is because they are resurrected and they can go into the city, but the sinner cannot go there. That's why it hasn't come down yet, because it can't be perverted or polluted. So I'm going to be making that case. I think I've already settled that. But the problem is, and this is where um, either I am now completely proven wrong that the Millennial Kingdom has not happened, or or the modern state of Israel is a hoax. And that is, where is this Jerusalem? Because I don't believe that this Jerusalem was destroyed. I believe Yahusha still reigns from it, if it has already happened, and we got to find out, well, where is that? And this is where again people are going to accuse me of just moving the goalie post. I've already had people who were on board with me who have now stepped off, said, you know what, I'm not going down this route because I so desperately want to believe. And I don't want, I'm not belittling them, but I believe that Israel is the Holy Land. And it's funny how leading up to this, I've had so many different circumstances in my life, that things I was looking into that all clicked, and one of those was just really questioning the Holy Land and just going like, I don't think that's a description of the Bible at all. In fact, when you look at Jerusalem today, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, like guys, like I've been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre multiple times. It is one of the most beautiful buildings out there. It is a stunningly beautiful building. It is very they all these cathedrals, as they're called, were easily transformed into the Catholic churches and things we see today post mud flood. That was very easily done. It was probably just some king who lived there, and they just transformed it into it afterwards. That's all I have to say about that. So when you actually look at Jerusalem as it exists now, almost all of it has been constructed since the 1900s. Even like a lot of the very old churches there, like they were built in the 1800s, and that's official history.
Hey, I had a thought. If we are in the millennial reign, remember Yeshua when he stepped down on the Mount Olives, the land split three ways, and it says one went from the north to the south, I believe.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that has something to do with the north, and also this thing that we've all been, from the time we were little, raised that Israel is to the east, and you pray towards the east, and that's also a Muslim thing. That really the action that we might be looking for, if we are indeed in that time age, is something happening in the north. if if there is that mountain, and that these current wicked people, millionaires and people who have their whatever their space rockets and programs are, they show off, who knows what they're really doing, but maybe they are preparing to go surround that mountain. And if we are in that last era, then we very well might be seeing something happen from the north.
I believe that what we're waiting on. I'm hearing my own voice come back. Okay, I believe what we're waiting on. The only thing we're waiting on, and there's still events happening all over the world. There's like you guys know my view obviously on the jab and all that, but the thing we're waiting on is the arrival of New Jerusalem. And it is amazing when so when New Jerusalem comes down, that is going to be Satan's cue. Like, this is it, guys. I was tormented for 1,000 years and it sucked. And I'm about to be thrown in there, like into that lake of fire, and we're gonna fight our way like into that thing. Like if there's any way out of this, we gotta get out of this now. And um when you look at like all the pop songs and rock songs out there that like what's that 180 song, burning down the house, we're gonna like get this party going, and as the house burns down, you look at all the James Bond songs, Pastor Dean Odell did one famously on Skyfall, which when pay attention to those lyrics, he was correct. It's basically telling you to stand up, stand tall, while the firmament comes down, and you meet your destruction. But there are so many James Bond songs like "We're Gonna Dance into the Fire," and it's just these demonic songs where they're just telling you, like, as New Jerusalem comes down to usher in eternity, like, you know we're gonna stand rebellious, to the very end. So that's what I think we're waiting on. We're waiting because Yahuwah is an all-consuming fire, and
Aren't
everyone.
fireballs supposed to come along with that? And that's why they're like talking about these asteroids when it's going to be fireballs from Yahuwah, and he's going to be taking out the evil ones.
Yeah, that's the thing about New Jerusalem. That see, like when he came the first time to usher in his kingdom, he melted a lot of people. Like, he destroyed a lot of people. It's interesting that the Dark Ages began officially like around the year 500. The Rome fell. They tell you that there was an eastern wing of the Roman Empire. That's kind of how they keep the story alive. But I think Rome fell. But we know that people survived it, right? People carried on. There were survivors. Even when I read the Odes of Solomon, it talks about the survivors of the war. But there's gonna be no survivors this time. It's done. It's over. It is. Sin is wiped out. Like, this is it. And yeah. So there, even I'd have to dig up that passage in Enoch. I read several months ago now, where it talks about the watchers being able to trample over the homes of the righteous, but they're never able to take the camp of Yah. I find that so fascinating. Like Satan can't take the camp of Yah, and the only thing he can do is just convince us it's not there, and that might be a huge part of the deception. We don't really know if this land exists up there and people are being deceived. We don't really know what the deception is. It might be just like ours or something slightly different. But there, in his line of thought, there may have been very good reason to divide the world in half, or by a third and two thirds, or whatever, to section off people, and uh, give them a very different narrative, because otherwise he may have not been able to hide the camp of Yah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and think about the scripture. It talks about he drew away 1/3 of the stars. Could this land mass area be 1/3 of the total land mass area? Think about it that way too.
Yeah.
It'll blow your mind.
Yeah. Well, you guys will have to act surprised in upcoming weeks when I talk about this again. Just pretend like it's the first time.
I ain't
I'm loving
gonna
it.
lie, bro.
But Polly, it will give you more time to process it. So then
Well,
you'll be like,
what's interesting here is that as we're waiting for New Jerusalem, because I'm with you, right there with you. So a lot of the prophecies that were about Israel already happened. So we don't need to be looking at Israel for what supposedly got to transpire, because that already happened pre-millennial kingdom when it was supposed to happen. So that's a good sign.
so okay. So let's put it this way, because I've been putting a lot of thought into this, and it's one of those things we'll probably never know. We'll just it'll be when Yahusha comes for us. He'll explain how it all went down. Let's say that the land of the promise of Israel is in that other part of the realm. Okay, so we have something here we call the Crusades, and I find the Crusades really interesting because all the prophecies I'm digging up that talk about his intervention, that he comes in, is because Edom, the Edomites, have taken over the land. Now um, we know that there were many Edomites have that took over, like Herod, um, at the time of Yahusha, including some of the temple priests. They were ruling running the show. So there's a little bit of that right there. But even the literature that time claimed that the Romans were Edomites, which is really interesting as well. Um, that doesn't necessarily pan out real well with how we perceive the Romans from our version of things. But the oldest texts say that the Romans were descendants of the Edomites. And what happened in the Crusades? there was a war over Jerusalem. The Romans slash the Edomites came in and were running the show, and there was some huge intervention that happened. My point to this is that again we see the same thing happening where there is a case to be made. Even some of the Zionist Jews will admit to this, that modern Ashkenazi Jews appear to be descendants of the Edomites. And what are they inhabiting? They're inhabiting a land that they claim is the land of promise. And so even if it's whether it's the real land of promise or not is irrelevant, because to me, because the people that are really into that are still they're still taking part in the worship of the beast system. Okay. But whether it's a fake prophecy or not, it's still set up to be one. Does that make sense? I mean, there there's there's a lot of things that are being repeated. Some of them are fake, some of them are real. And I don't know, it's hard to tell. As I one of the things that people bring up a lot, they're like, okay, Noel, if all this already happened, then I don't really have to worry about the mark of the beast. I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a second here, wait a second. Because sin is sin, right? A transgression of the law is a transgression of the law. Keeping Sabbath is still keeping Sabbath. Those rules haven't changed. So if you have something that's coming along like this jab that is actually, you know, changing people's genetic code, in my opinion, um, that to me is a like, just don't do it. Like, it's a naughty no-no. Like, even if you could argue the mark of the beast has already happened, just let's say it hasn't, and just the rules still apply, whatever age we're in. The man of lawlessness. I told you, we read in the Odes of Solomon where it said the corrupter already came and was just defeated. All right, what if there's another corrupter that stands up again? Right? I don't know. It could happen again.
Yeah, I had two things I wanted to add. Is one, I wanted to follow up on what Deborah Yah mentioned about the Mount of Olives stands on it. We have the splitting, the earthquakes. We have at the crucifixion earthquake. We have the dead rising around that time. We have Hasatan in prison and then loosened. So we have these events where we know the earth is having some tremendous changes, so to speak. Who knows what kind of geographical changes may have happened from those, each and every one of those events. So that's one thing to consider. And then I also wanted to add to Paulie mentioning about scriptures in Malachi 4:1. Talks about the Son of Righteousness, and that's the SUN of righteousness. So that's something maybe we can look further into. Maybe there is a reference to this Son that exists, or maybe it's referencing our Son. I don't know, but that's maybe another rabbit hole to go down. That was my 2 cents to add. Some thoughts.
Guys, I'm going to give it a few more minutes and then I'll be signing off for the night.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, that we could have had some geographical land changes, for sure. But I think again, hidden in plain sight, quite possible, that many of us are kind of looking like, so was it America? Everything about it, how it's been settled, where did the people come from? Did they walk over a land bridge, from Asia, which has basically been refuted, that it's not true, that the people were from this area. They didn't come from Asia. They didn't come from Europe or Africa, that they're from this land. And that, that there's this whole history about, but again, it doesn't go back too far into the, let's say, the Native American tribes. how far back their own history goes. It goes back to creation stories. It really doesn't necessarily lend itself to, I want to say, I'm not that familiar, but thousands of years. It really goes quite quickly into a time of myth, and which again is showing that with the narrative of today, how confusing what took place here in America really is the story of the whole world. Sure, they've lied everywhere else, like what's happened to China, it being a land of 1,000 tribes, that, now they're all Han Chinese, for example, or wanting to be. But so when we look at America, that like Brave New World, this is a complete lie. And that, what do you mean? And I'm like, okay, because even the slavery, even just those numbers, it's like what happened there, even with the narrative that we're given. It's like, do you guys realize that there was more in this trade of human beings or slavery, that America really didn't get that big of a percentage compared to other places, and that the numbers don't add up? So again, there was a narrative flip. And so when we look at there, it had to be a complete narrative flip. Again, we're looking at the whole history of America being a lie, and that it wasn't discovered 200 years ago, that the history of the Native Americans, even being these tribal people that were living on the land, is a lie, that again, we have to go to, again, advanced civilization. So the people that we were taught, once again, that it kind of reminds me of the Hawaiians, that even if you guys we have this idea programmed into us of indigenous people being very, how do we want to say it? Not advanced, but in terms of, the modern age, not advanced, where I'm shaking my head at that going, nah, there's something really fishy with that narrative. And now that we, the Millennial Kingdom and all of this comes to the forefront and shows us of the beauty and the majesty all over the world, all over the earth, all over this realm, even here, showing us the truer history, that this narrative again of of America, we got to throw it right out the window and go, yeah, we got to get out of this idea of native people, that there's this indigenous people that lived on the land and then we came over and we overtook them. We got that one we got to take right out, because that's the conquering narrative that's playing out today in the mainstream with all this white supremacy, white people, critical race theory. You can see it playing out right there in another way.
So,
Hey, oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say that, yeah, I mean, this is where it gets hard, because a lot of history is a lie, but I think a lot of it is actually very coded, and it's hard for me to pick and choose what is real and what is not. But for example, something like the Salem witch trials, I actually think that was legit. I think that legitimately happened. It was a hoax. The Salem witch trials was a intel psyop and a hoax. I think it happened though. I think a lot of events happened. 1776, not so sure about, but there are some interesting things that happened in 1776, like the creation of the Illuminati. There are a lot of coded things that these events are actually telling us. In all the genealogical research I've done on the on serpent seed, on these families that are all interrelated, like in Hollywood, and it's just really freaky stuff. They almost all of them can be traced through a couple of the people coming over on the Mayflower, Plymouth Rock. Now, I don't know if Plymouth Rock really happened, but there's something about these genealogies that they're trying to tell us, that the powers that be are spreading messages saying that there's something about that they're telling about the Mayflower landing at Plymouth Rock. Does that make sense?
All
So,
right, so check it out. Somebody just made a video and shared it, and they showed Salem, where I'm from, that the big fire happened and took out most of the city in 1815 or something. No,
Huh.
was it 1850? Or the late 18, no, 1915, actually.
Okay.
Beginning of the 1900s. It was, and then you see what was there before. It's like, no, this was an old Tartarian city. Or as we say, this was way developed than what we know. These weren't villages. These weren't, you know what I mean? These weren't, because we get the idea of the pilgrims. They came and they suffered and they had to, live in these. We got them, like Jamestown, you got the wooden forts and stuff. And then you
Yeah.
realize you see these old photos and you're like, wait a second, where were all these buildings? Now, how come all these buildings are gone? Now, there was a civilization here before. We know it. So that we got to get that cognitive dissonance and go, wait a second. Yes, like you're saying, some of those stories are true. They happened, but they took place in a different world. It was a different, it just, we got to get out of, like you said, about the Wild West and this horse-drawn carriage. We might have went backwards to it, right? But we were ahead of it at one time.
I was going to say something on a different topic. Is that okay? It's back to what Rob was saying about Malachi 4:1 and 4:2. I accidentally discovered a little bit more of the feminine Ruach HaKodesh in looking at Malachi 4:1 talks about judgment. Malachi 4:2 talking about, and I'll read it to you, but shall arise. And the next word to you, the next word is to fear, the next word is my name, which is Sema. The next word is Shemesh, which the first instantiation of Shemesh was, I think Genesis 15. And so it wasn't the proper noun used for the sun, but Job used it. Shemesh, it means the great itch. But it's the word for that thing in the sky. And then it says Sedekah, which means of righteousness, Marpeh, which is with healing, Bikna Penah, in her wings. So the Son of Righteousness with healing in her wings. And I don't know why this says he. I don't know why they mistranslated it he, but it's a feminine word, but ha. So Shemesh comes and she brings righteousness with healing in her wings. So is this another unfolding of the idea of the feminine Ruach HaKodesh coming as the sun, as a form of wisdom, as a form of Sophia with healing in her wings. So anyway, no pun intended. But
Nice.
it's no pun intended, but it dovetails very nicely into a lot of work that you've done, Malachi 4:2. But it is a singular noun, the son Shemesh. So just wanted to give you that little ditty that we accidentally found tonight.
Nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said before, it's you see it as you read scripture, and I find that uh, this conversation that we're having even tonight on viewing the world differently, as we put on this additional lens to start looking at things through them, we will see things different. We will see scriptures somewhat differently, in a way that we can start drawing more meaning out of them, or more possibilities of what the scriptures truly saying. Because I think most of us here believe that when you read scripture, you can take it face value, and then there's multiple dimensions to those scriptures when you apply different lenses on them. So that's great stuff.
I know that Noel and Pam and I have all been to Star Forts, going back to, because I feel like I'm responsible to get back to the main topic, I guess. We've all seen Star Forts and another buildings that not necessarily, could have been built with the technology they had, or should have been built. And that goes back to, in my opinion, the Baalbek stones and, obviously pyramids. Is it a possibility, Noel, that some of the architecture was built by not only the sons of Elohim, us, in that era, but the Bnei Elohim, the Nephilim spirits, instantiated through their sons, their sons' sons, the corrupt versions of mankind. Is there versions of us building things and them building things, and if there are, what are the differences or what are the similarities? No, you've gone mute.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know why my mic turned off. Okay. So, that's an interesting point. I can't answer that. There is a lot of a lot of interest in giants in what we call Greater Tartaria, and I confess I haven't done a lot of research on that, and I can't answer that. Some of the structures do look like they were built for giants. Again, I don't know, but I will say this: one of the things that makes the a lot of this architecture so fascinating in Europe. But keep in mind, America is the big giveaway. I want to talk about that with the Wild West in a second, because America is the giveaway of how this is a hoax, or the official narrative is a hoax. But they will tell you officially that these kings, these elite, rich rulers who built these phenomenal palaces, they built all of this and they built no bathrooms. There are no bathrooms in them. Meanwhile, the peasants who live in little, stick shacks and stuff had plumbing. They figured it out, and they were able to, by the way, to keep their places warm. But the castles, the palaces, they weren't able to keep them warm. Well, that's really weird. And I talked a little bit about that with the Breatharians, but this is more testimony to me, because a lot of the people who are looking into this mud flood in Tartaria are not Christians. They're not Torah based. They're not biblical believers. They believe the Bible was made up in the 1800s. But they're looking at this and going, I think these people were breatharians. They didn't have digestive systems. They lived off the ether. The way they describe them sounds to me like resurrected people. Um, so going back to the Wild West, I actually do think, because Pamela brought that up earlier tonight, and just see, I love westerns too. I used to love westerns. I just like, High Noon is one of my favorite films, and a lot of those. So the thing is, though, is that when you look at the first photographs coming through of the people who I believe were kicked out of the kingdom, you have these big, beautiful structures, and there's like the roads are all muddy and just disgusting looking, and you've got these people walking around, on horses and carriages, and they're building very vulgar, like sticks and and just like shanty villages like that. That describes that crude people, that they were building those little crude houses. There's no way that they built those huge, beautiful domed buildings. Um, and so when you're getting into the American West, and they're pushing this idea of manifest destiny, I wrote this whole thing before I came out about the Millennial Kingdom. I did this whole thing, the series showing how that was a big psyop, manifest destiny, westward expansionism. I believe the Donner Party I believe it happened, but it was a total hoax. It was Freemasons and Mormons running it up, and you start to see that the newspapers in Sacramento start pushing the idea that there are these people stuck in the Sierra Nevadas in the winter, who are cannibalizing each other. This is before the search party was ever sent out, they were ever discovered. So that's a big red flag, that the newspaper people were able to figure out that women and children were eating each other before they knew about it. And I think what they were doing is that they were the Donner Party was a morality tale of keep to the Oregon Trail. We have established the Oregon Trail that you were supposed to stay on. The Donner Party bought a map from some guy in the desert, and they went off and they all died. So do not go these routes. What they were doing is they were probably protecting already established highways, perhaps train tracks that were already laid, and and building structures and other things like that. So as was commented on by Pamela, Texas is a huge place. It's a huge place. You could easily rope off and protect the Capitol building, things like that, the Sacramento Capitol building, all these kind of things that then were you know again, there's no construction photos, there's no blueprints, anything like that. They just kind of appeared, but hopefully everyone gets my point on that. So I do believe that the Wild West, there were some legitimate things about it. Yeah, like the whole Wyatt Earp story is all invented. I mean, later on, that the whole, I hate to say it because everybody loves, the OK Corral, but that was like totally invented, all that stuff. But invented by Freemasons and so on and so forth. But I think that yeah, there were ranchers out there. There were people living in stick homes and very vulgar, uh, almost barbarians compared to what was there 100 years before.
You think are you kind of saying that they were trying to scare people off from stumble upon like other ancient places?
I believe that's the story of the Donner Party. And I wrote it, um I only got to a two-part paper. It was supposed to be a three-part paper. I never finished it. Where I was, the third part was where I was going to show that the whole story of cannibalism is so ridiculous, and it was all conceived, put out in the press. But yes, I believe that that was one of the morality tales of that, because keep in mind the Donner Party happened the year before the gold rush started. And the gold rush was also another hoax, by the way, because James Marshall and Sutter, uh, both of them Freemasons, they were never once ever able to produce gold. James Marshall, the guy who discovered gold, never produced real gold. Just let that sink in. Okay, so they started pushing the story, and you start thinking in alchemical terms of what they might actually be talking about, gold in the hills and so on and so forth. Um, and so they were, and also, the Alamo was another false flag attack. Everything that was happening. You see all the Mormons that are the Mormons in the military settling into California, Yorba Linda, which then became San Francisco. Uh, you know, the San Francisco was probably the capital of what we would call Greater Tartaria. It was a city that existed, already fully developed, I believe, before the gold rush ever showed up. But
I kind of I don't know if your thoughts are on like that. Were they like just raiding all the gold that was left from like I've been trying to figure that out, but some people
well,
are saying
if you go to Alaska today or the Sierra Nevadas, people are still digging up gold in the Sierra Nevadas. I mean, if
oh,
you
I meant in the buildings and yeah, in places that were in San Francisco.
that's a good thought. That is a possible good thought, but the problem is why did James Marshall and John Sutter never be able to? Why did they never produce gold? I mean, if they were able just to go in the buildings and get gold, you would think like, oh look, here's the gold. I don't know, but
But I think it was like you said, it was controlled already.
it was all controlled. The whole narrative was controlled. That's
Become
that's
running in water.
just
Yeah.
just like the narrative today is all controlled. It's been controlled since the very beginning. It's always been controlled, all of it.
You know,
Intel
the
Intel has been running everything.
your example of the Donner Party reminds me of the Gabby whatever story, the couple who went like the Instagram couple who were like traveling in an RV. And it's like this big, I don't know the purpose, but um it is kind of like this big scare thing, like don't go traveling the country. Stay put. Don't do you know what story I'm talking about?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I'm trying to think
It
about
was
that
just
one.
like a month ago. It was like the Gabby Petito
Thing that
murder.
on a party. Yeah, don't go off the beaten trail. You don't want to go be a free spirit. You're, roaming around. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. That
There's
Donner
probably
Party
multiple
narrative.
reasons for that
Yeah,
story going viral and getting pushed so hard, along with
it's
like
like
covering up the all the
right.
other stuff in politics that was happening
They've
at
So
the
been
time. But
pushing this. They've been pushing moving to the cities ever since I've been a child, and stay away from the outdoorsy, suburban, urban areas. Move to a city where you can have a sense of security. They've been pushing that since I recall from '76. It was a huge thing in the bicentennial, where we're told that the cities are American way of life, and it maybe it all back to the '50s, but I know it happened when Ford invented the assembly line or whatever. The word employee was invented. We didn't have that whole idea. It was a agrarian society before that. They've always been pushing us to come to centers of control.
so I I speculate that a lot of the train tracks were already laid down. The story of the Chinamen coming and dynamiting through the mountains kind of falls flat. Another huge one that is clearly a hoax is the building of what was it, the Hudson Canal. And if you guys look into that, like just go to the Wikipedia page and see, like they had to build like how many like was it like 10 miles per week or something like that, like some ridiculous number that these dudes had to go in there before I think before dynamite was even invented. They had black powder that they had to blast through. They had to clear entire forest, blast through rocks and build this thing, and it's an incredible canal. And you just look at all this and go, there's no way, there is no way they did all this stuff. And so yeah, so the that's my whole thing. Yeah, westward expansionism, just like they create a false flag event like 9/11 to drag us into these wars, and we all believe it, and we go in and we fight for our freedom in these other countries and stuff. It's very easy to manipulate people. It's very easy to pull something off like, oh no, Davy Crockett died in the Alamo. Oh dear, we got to go to war now with Mexico, right? It is so easy to pull off these false flag attacks. They have been doing it forever. And to haul all these, they had to somehow explain after we see that the population boom happened in the 1800s, right? Like there was any chart will show you, like there was an explosive population boom in the 1800s after everyone had been killed off, and they had to explain some way to get people out there, fill these cities up, fill San Francisco, fill Chicago, all these pre-existing cities. And so that's what the whole story is. And they had to control the routes, how people got there, very cleverly. They had to, oh, let's fight a war over here, and so on and so forth.